But during the 5th drop, which was some 69 feet high, she lost her footing and was sent tumbling over the edge to her demise. Gee, it's almost like the safety restraints were there for a reason.
What it is, guys? It's your boy BlastphamousHD, and today we're here to watch a video you guys sent to me in the DMs. It is called Extremely Embarrassing Ways That People Have Died. The link in the description down below. It's by Be Amazed, not the VMAs. It sounded similar. Let's do this.
Butt of the joke. I don't often get to pick favorites, but as far as dumb decisions go, this is probably the funniest dumb decision I've ever heard of. Back in 2009 in Pennsylvania, USA, a 17-year-old boy was rushed to A&E after claiming bullies had planted an explosive in his backpack. Obviously, the police were called, but the injuries he sustained...
He was jacking his anus off with a lit firecracker. I know it. I'm like Batman, except black man instead. I'm like, I have all the detective capabilities of the Cape Crusader, except I'm still black. I'm black man off up in this bitch. And my detective abilities and analytical prowesses let me know that that's what he was doing. He was giving himself a chocolate strawberry, and I know that's the truth because I just made up the name of that sex position just now.
Didn't match his story. It was only then that the teen revealed what had actually happened. He'd gone rifling through his grandmother's possessions and found an M80 explosive, an American class of very large firecracker containing some 80 grams of flash powder.
I really hope I'm wrong about how I think he actually died.
They were often used by the U.S. military to simulate grenade explosions, but they were banned for sale in 1966 by the Child Protection Act.
Right.
And we're about to find out why. This idiot had taken the firecracker up to his room and, in a stunningly stupid move, began to repeatedly light and extinguish the fuse. However, during one of these insane cycles, he lit it up and couldn't put it out. Instead of throwing the explosive out of a window or as far away as possible,
he tried to shove it up his anus, hoping his insides would douse out the flame. 3 guys died like that back in the day on an episode of Rescue 911 that I made up in my head. It's the truth, though.
He instead jammed the thing between his thighs and put his hands over it.
What?
Big
No!
mistake.
No!
The resulting blast cost him his right hand, right leg, and most of his junk. Meaning while he survived, he lost the ability to reproduce and thus removed any future DNA of his from the gene pool.
Try to massage the inside of his anus with a lit firecracker. Whew, that was close.
I think I just saw Darwin give this story a thumbs up from his grave. Up in flames. There are some jobs that are obviously a little more dangerous than others. And back in 1819, no one had a riskier or more fantastical job than Sophie Blanchard. Also known as Madame Blanchard, she was a French aeronaut and was the first woman to work as a professional balloonist.
So you pussy bitch!
She would ascend in a chair attached to hydrogen balloons to entertain huge crowds of people below her. Well, this was a time before the internet. I guess the French had very limited entertainment options.
Right.
Sophie would regularly perform in the Tivoli Gardens, sometimes using pyrotechnics called blue light or bingle fire to really spice up her high-flying act. The only problem is that hydrogen is incredibly flammable, and people knew this, regularly warning Sophie about the danger of using pyrotechnics in her shows. But Sophie would not be deterred. And so on the 6th of July, 1819, a particularly gusty day, Sophie ascended. She struck up her fiery display and waved down to the crowds when, all of a sudden, her balloon caught alight. The fire spread quickly, Hindenburg style, and she began to descend rapidly. She seemed calm, but then the wind caught her draft, blowing it out of the gardens and into the side of several nearby buildings.
Oh my God!
Which is when she fell, fatally. Not exactly the blaze of glory she was aiming for, I bet. Can it? It's not often that you guys send me your own stories for this series, but one Be Amazed viewer called Collie Carney got in touch with a tale that definitely deserves a Darwin Award of its own. Back in 2015, Collie's neighbor was bored. So bored that the only thing they could think of to alleviate their boredom was to grab their trash can, lay it down on the road, and hop inside it. They then used it to sled down the street like the world's worst toboggan.
Idle hands are the devil plaything. Oh boy.
However, unlike a toboggan track, a road has cars, which Collie's neighbor quickly discovered. Their trash can soon collided with an oncoming car and was yeeted into the side of someone's house.
Hearing a white person say yeeted into the side of a house just made my whole month.
They didn't survive, but they did prove that sometimes the trash takes itself out. Do you have any Darwin Award-winning stories of your own? Let me know down below, or if it's a bit lengthy, send me a message at stories@beamazed.com. Who knows, you might make it into the inevitable next part of this series. Bearing all. I live my life by a few very simple rules, and one of those is not to make any big decisions after I've had a few drinks. This is a lesson that a Serbian gentleman could have benefited from back in 2007. One evening during the Belgrade Beer Festival, this guy, who was assumed to be absolutely wasted, proceeded to head over to the Belgrade Zoo, broke in, stripped down until he was butt naked, and then climbed into the bear enclosure.
Look, man, when you drunk, a mouth is a mouth. You know what I'm saying?
Okay, I can understand being drunk enough to text your ex or drunk enough to order $100 of fast food, but this is another level of drunk.
He was living his best life.
Long. The bears, Masha and Misha, wasted no time making a meal of the idiot, and it was only in the morning that the zookeepers discovered him, half-eaten and wholly dead. They figured that he must have been under the influence because, in their words, only an idiot would walk into the bear enclosure. Well, stuff can be two things. What's to say this guy wasn't drunk and an idiot?
Death by snoo-snoo. I'm not gonna lie, I'm going for it.
Good boy. Back in 2002, on the 29th of July, a TV channel in Ukraine reported on a story from the suburbs of Luhansk that nobody watching could believe. Late that evening, a deputy of the local administration board had been out walking his dog when he encountered a young police cadet. The cadet was escorting two women home in the dark and noticed the dog wasn't on a lead or wearing a muzzle. So doing his duty, the cadet informed the deputy that what he was doing was illegal. The deputy, having been upstaged so publicly, began to argue with the cadet. Things were getting tense, but the situation really escalated when the deputy suddenly revealed he had an RGD-5 grenade, pulled the pin, and hurled it at the cadet.
What?
Very rational response there. But because his dog wasn't on a lead or wearing a muzzle, the deputy's faithful four-legged friend ran to retrieve the grenade like a ball and brought it right back to him.
Bad dog!
The master and dog, sadly, both met an explosive fate.
Yo, dog ain't shit! Wow! What about the man's best friend, motherfucker? I put food in your bowl, bitch. How you gonna do me, nigga? Can't even trust a dog. What type of shit?
That's rough.
Wow!
Good shot. There aren't enough considerate car thieves in this world, if you ask me.
That's rough.
Unlike our next Darwin Award winner. Rather than just stealing cars and abandoning them when they were reported stolen, one car thief in Pittsburgh would also set fire to them, reasoning that this helped the owners claim insurance. But this horrendous habit would eventually become his own downfall. Back in 1998, our arsonist and a few friends decided to steal an old van that wasn't in the best of shape. Soon after, it was reported stolen to the police, so as usual, he planned to set the vehicle ablaze by lighting a fire in the passenger seat. However, he didn't know that the door handle on the driver's side of the cab was broken, so when he tried to get out, he quickly discovered he was trapped. His friends tried to get him out, but the door was locked and the fire quickly burned out of control. Police found him the next day. Apparently, he was charred to a crisp. Idiot confinement. We all know at least one person who just cannot live without attention. Aside from being impossible to satisfy, they often don't know when to stop. Much like this next award winner. Back in 2015, a Croatian criminal who...
I just got done dealing with some people who didn't know when to stop, and that's not even nasty.
Who'd been jailed for repeatedly threatening his ex-girlfriend was put in the prison's solitary confinement section for bad behavior. Not a fan of his new padded pad, he decided to force the guards to pay attention to him by pulling out a lighter he'd smuggled in and setting fire to the cushion pads lining the walls, ceiling, and floors. He expected the guards to come back to get him out immediately, but 20 seconds later, no one was coming. 40 seconds later, he was still on his own, and the fire was growing. After a minute, he began to panic as the room was starting to fill with smoke and flames. All too late, he realized he'd set fire to a room that was completely flammable, and the guards simply wouldn't notice in time. Well, that's one way to serve a life sentence. Man versus tree. Back in 2004, police were called to the scene of an accident around the back of a house in Georgia, USA, that left them, in a word, stumped. A large tree had toppled on top of a truck, both of which were charred and smoldering. Inside the truck was a body burned beyond recognition, but the entire scene didn't make any sense. The tree had fallen onto the truck instead of away from it, which is what they would have expected if the two had collided. But why would they have collided behind a house? And what had started the fire? Slowly but surely, the puzzle pieces came together. It appeared that the gentleman behind the wheel of the truck had been attempting to remove the tree from the yard by tying the truck to the tree and flooring it. He'd assumed the tree would use some sort of cartoon physics and fall away from the truck, but because we live in reality, the tree fell in the direction of the applied force and landed on top of the truck, crushing the driver. The engine overheated, setting both the truck and tree ablaze, and the rest is Darwin Award-winning history.
Hey, but look on the bright side. At least they didn't have to pay somebody $200 to do it for them.
Getting shredded. Hiring a tree surgeon to trim back or cut down your trees can be expensive, but doing the work yourself can end up costing even more, as one man found out back in 2008. Instead of paying a professional, he'd hired an industrial tree shredder and placed it at the base of an old oak tree in his yard which had recently been struck by lightning. He was planning on cutting away the dead section of the tree himself by climbing up and trimming it away, dropping any stray branches down into the hopper beneath him. Only thing was, he hadn't used harnesses, safety equipment, or, well, anything to secure himself to the tree. So entirely unsecured, he clambered up the ladder, stepped out onto a branch, and began cutting away when suddenly he lost his footing and fell straight into the shredder. Yikes. Well, on the plus side, I bet he made for a very moist mulch. Claymore Cretans. Cambodia has seen its share of violence and explosions following the historic and horrendous Cambodian-Vietnamese War. But in 1999, 10 years after the war ended, an explosion in a cafe in Svay Rieng province caught the attention of the tabloids. According to witnesses, 3 regular frenemies were drinking heavily at a cafe and exchanging insults with one another when one of them, clearly disgruntled, suddenly pulled out a Claymore landmine and threw it under the table. He drunkenly explained he'd found it in his backyard and wanted the men to play the ultimate game of Russian roulette with it. While the other, much smarter patrons were fleeing, these 3 intoxicated idiots took turns stamping on the pressure-triggered explosive in an attempt to set it off. 7 stamps later, the bomb detonated, taking all 3 men with it. Well, they say you can take out 2 birds with 1 stone, or in this case, 3 idiots with 1 landmine. Leveled crossing. April 15th is a pretty important day in the U.S. calendar. Why? Because that's the most common day of the U.S. tax filing deadline. But back in 2001, this fell on a Sunday, meaning there were limited post office hours available to send off any last-minute tax documents before the IRS came knocking. This was something a man from Tennessee desperately wanted to avoid, and so he was in his car racing to the post office in the hopes of submitting his taxes on time. But as he was driving, he noticed a slow-moving train heading for a crossing which would have blocked his route for several minutes at least. In an attempt to avoid this, he floored it and sped over the crossing just before the train reached it. But as he did so, crash! Another car racing from the other direction was also trying to beat the train, and the 2 collided. One driver perished and the other was wounded, but by some cosmic miracle, the crash occurred just to the side of the tracks, so the train passed by unimpeded, and no passengers were injured. Well, I guess these idiots proved that trying to beat an active train crossing is taxing, to say the least. Getting airtime. If you've ever been to Holiday World and Splash and Safari in Indiana, USA, then you probably know the Raven. This big old bird-themed wooden roller coaster has a peak height of 110 feet and a top speed of 50 miles per hour. Not exactly the tallest or fastest coaster out there, but still super fun nonetheless. However, back in 2003, one woman made a supremely dumb decision in a bid to really get her adrenaline pumping. Riding the Raven with her fiancé, the pair of roller coaster enthusiasts had their lap bar and seatbelts checked by staff before the coaster set off. But a few moments later, she undid her seatbelt, tucked the 2 sides into the cushions of her seat, and wriggled out of the lap bar. She wanted to stand up as the coaster went down the drops in a bid to catch what roller coaster enthusiasts refer to as airtime. But during the 5th drop, which was some 69 feet high, she lost her footing and was sent tumbling over the edge to her demise. Gee, it's almost like the safety restraints were there for a reason. Dog days. In my opinion, people who hurt animals on purpose belong in a special circle of hell.
That's real.
And as it would happen, this next story, while involving a dog who was likely abused by its owner, ends humiliatingly for said owner.
I'm glad.
That means I get to immortalize him here for the entire world to laugh at.
That's real. Because I'm going to laugh. Hit humans, man, not animals. Just get in the UFC, man. You'll be able to do all the violence you want.
2008 and head over to upstate New York. Here, a 50-year-old man was bird hunting alongside a few of his buddies with his faithful canine companion at his side. Suddenly, the dog found a deer leg bone and began chewing on it. The owner tried to take it away, but the dog refused to give up its bone. Frustrated, the hunter began to wield his shotgun like a club, swinging the butt of it at the dog. Each time he did, the dog dodged. That was until this idiot slammed the butt of the shotgun into the ground. The shock triggered the gun to fire, with the muzzle pointed directly at his stomach. The huntsman was airlifted to the hospital, but didn't make it, though he did live just long enough to confirm this account to the police. Well, what can I say? At least the dog got to keep its bone. Midnight Mess. North Carolina is an American state that allows a lot of different types of gun ownership. And while most people are careful with the way they use, handle, and store their guns, that can't be said for everyone. Back in December 1992, during the very early hours, a man in the town of Newton was woken by the sound of the landline telephone ringing next to his bed. Sleepily, in the darkness, he grabbed the phone and put it to his ear. Only it wasn't the phone he grabbed, but the handgun he'd left on his bedside table. For some reason, this incredibly sloppy gun owner had left his handgun there with the safety off, and when he brought it up to his ear, accidentally pushing the trigger down in the process, boom. So for any gun owners watching, don't leave your firearms lying around with the safety off, unless you too want your gun to double up as the world's worst alarm clock. Honorable mention, French hiss. Now, it wouldn't be a Darwin Award video without at least one insane story heralding from the state of Florida. We've covered plenty of crazy stories from this state before, but this next one might just be the weirdest yet. Back in 2017, a man from Putnam County discovered a rattlesnake on his property. So he did the responsible thing and put it in a tank with the intent to release it somewhere far away the following day. Surprisingly responsible for a Florida man story, right? Well, in the meantime, he told his neighbors what he'd found, who had a less responsible reaction. They immediately decided to play with the wild snake, before one of them said he was going to kiss it on the mouth. I'm not sure what he thought was going to happen, but as he puckered up for a big open-mouthed snaky smooch, the rattlesnake did what you'd expect it to. It bit him on the tongue. Now, rattlesnake venom is nasty, and in the right doses it can cause numbness, swelling, nausea, difficulty breathing, and even death. And so, as this guy's tongue and throat started to swell up, he was rushed to the hospital and put in a protective coma state for a few days. Miraculously, he survived, so sadly no Darwin Award today. But with any luck, this taught our resident idiot a thing or two about not forcing himself on deadly animals. Consent is key, my dude.
Unconsensual sex with animals is a lot riskier than you would think. A lot harder, too. It's way easier to just act like you like the same stuff that a girl likes and then invite her back to your house for wine and feet nudes. 60% of the time, it works every time.
Life. Helium can be hilarious. Because the gas is 6 times less dense than air, sound waves travel through it much quicker. So if you inhale it, your voice sounds much higher. I could listen to this forever.
That's funny. I could have went the rest of my life without ever having heard it the first time.
But helium shouldn't be inhaled for too long, because even though it's a gas, you still need oxygen to breathe. Which is a very basic science lesson that these two next award winners apparently missed out on.
Show me somebody taken in the air from a balloon and it sounded like T-Pain. I'd want to see that. I don't do opera music.
Back in 2006 in Tampa Bay, Florida, two 21-year-olds spotted a huge promotional balloon 8 foot in diameter used to advertise condominiums for Lakeview at Calusa Trace. It was late and quiet, and so they decided to pull the huge balloon down and get inside it for maximum high-voiced humor. They cut it open and shoved their top halves inside as the balloon gradually deflated, enjoying the squeaky high notes. But it didn't last long. You see, when our lungs are filled with helium, it means we're not filling them with oxygen, which our organs rely on. Depending on how much helium is inhaled, a person can lose consciousness quickly and die from lack of oxygen, also known as asphyxiation, which is exactly what happened. Dizzy and confused, these two idiots lost consciousness and were only found the next morning when a local sheriff spotted the bottom halves of their bodies sticking out from the deflated balloon. Well, at least they ended on a high. A burning problem. Now, I really respect volunteer firefighters. It's a pretty thankless job that requires an immense amount of bravery. But being brave and being stupid aren't mutually exclusive terms, as the Sequoia Volunteer Fire Department in Tennessee proved back in 1999. This supreme team of 7 idiots were bored, having not received a call for help in over 2 months. And so they started up a dangerous habit of using gasoline to light fires in vacant houses in a rural part of Chattanooga. They'd then rush in, put out the blaze, and pretend to be heroes. But this incredibly dangerous ruse all fell apart one day when one of them, who was spreading gasoline in the attic, didn't realize the others had already started the blaze. The fire spread so quickly it trapped the wannabe hero in the attic, where he met his demise. When the real firefighters and police were called in, they realized all too quickly what had been happening. The 6 accomplices faced a combined total of 60 years in prison. Man, I don't think there's enough water on Earth to cool that burn. Love in the cockpit. Let's fly back in time to 1991 Florida, where 2 pilots of a small Piper Seneca aircraft decided to undertake a simulated instrument flight. This is where a literal hood is placed over the eyes of the pilot, and they fly using only the instrument on the dashboard. It's a fairly standard practice. However, on this day, witnesses noticed that while in the air, the aircraft's right wing suddenly failed before it dived down and crashed.
Oh!
Neither pilot survived. People began to wonder what could have caused such a tragic accident. Had both pilots been wearing a hood? Was the plane defective? Was it on purpose? Well, on closer inspection of the crash, a few things became clear. The front right seat was in a fully reclined position, neither pilot was wearing their seatbelt, and both were only...
Yep, one of them was getting street mouth. The other one was on the receiving end, and then right as they reached that special moment, he realized that I am incapacitated for either 7 seconds or the entire time that this is going down. And at some point, he was just like, look, if I move, I don't think I'm going to bust this nut the same way. I'm just going, Jesus take the wheel. And now it's over.
Partially clothed. Further examination revealed no rips or tears to any zippers or buttons, so it appeared that the pilots had removed their clothes themselves, used the fully reclined seat as a bed, and, tried to join the Mile High Club, if you get my drift. But with no one, flying the plane, it began to move erratically, leading to the wing failure and eventual crash. Guess you could say they were victims of the ultimate high. Gunning for a fight. Okay, I want you to imagine you were planning a robbery. I imagine there'd be a few essential things you'd try and take into account before picking a target, right? Things like what valuables will they have? Will there be many people around, or will they be well armed? Alternatively, you can contemplate none of these things and just wing it, like our next Darwin Award winner did. Back in 1990, our would-be criminal made the big brain decision to target a gun store located near Seattle, Washington. Did he do this early in the morning or late at night when it'd be a little quieter? No, he went for 4:40 in the afternoon when the store was super crowded. He waltzed in, fired a few wild shots into the air, and announced to everyone in no uncertain terms that he was robbing the joint. Now, being a gun store, this place attracted a certain type of patron. The type that really likes guns. And it was only after he'd fired off his shots that he noticed a uniformed policeman having coffee with the store owner. Yep, our criminal had also managed to miss the police car parked outside the store. All of a sudden, several people being held up pulled out their own firearms and let loose on the robber, including the policeman. After taking a barrage of bullets, he was put down, and amazingly, no one else in the store was injured. Considering just how dumb this guy was, I'm amazed he was holding the gun the right way around.
Dumpster drank.
Ooh.
Of all the places you should never gather a nice, refreshing drink from, a landfill site is pretty high on the list. Or at least it should be. But for one couple from Belarus, a landfill seemed just as good as a convenience store for acquiring drinks back in October 2020.
A couple? As in more than one person? How dumb you gotta be for your boyfriend to convince you to sample trash with your mouth nonetheless? Not that there's any other place you would sample it from, but still.
While scouring the local dump, as you do, a man found this bottle filled with a mysterious murky liquid and took the bottle home to share its contents with his wife. It seemed the pair assumed it contained some perfectly safe-to-drink homemade hooch, and like a nice bottle of wine after a hard day's work, popped it open to share.
Hooch rhymes with gooch, and I would never drink from a gooch unless she were attractive. We gonna edit that out.
Unsurprisingly, the next day, the couple became extremely ill, and while emergency services were called, it proved too late. The concoction in the bottle, it turned out, had indeed been homemade alcohol, but its owner had seemingly disposed of it after realizing it wasn't very good at all. In fact, it was completely poisonous. As a result, the couple kicked the bucket together after what might be considered the worst romantic dinner of all time. Pretty dumb, right?
There's a lesson in all this, folks. Don't eat ass. It could kill you.
On the fence. Some people will go to great lengths to protect their personal possessions.
That's a good movie. Go see it. Wolf of Wall Street.
But one Brazilian man's desperation to keep his car safe from thieves back in 2010 proved to be his downfall. As robberies were becoming increasingly frequent in his local area, the fellow decided to keep his car protected by building a miniature electric fence around it. Only this wasn't any old touch it and get a slightly uncomfortable warning shock kind of fence. This one was amped up and designed to hurt a lot. For a while, it seemed to work well, seeing as nobody stole the car. But things soon came to a shocking conclusion. When, on one occasion, he forgot he'd left the electric fence turned on when he attempted to move it aside to get into his car. He was electrocuted, and he'd built his contraption with such a high current that it killed him. Talk about being your own worst enemy. A refreshing swim. How far would you go to save your phone? Would you be crazy enough to dive into an icy, partially frozen river to retrieve it? Well, one man from Detroit did exactly that in February 2020.
Black people are tropical people. We do not fox with the cold. Why y'all think ice hockey is the only sport that black people ain't really dominating? But the minute they make an ice hockey rink with a heated floor, I will be in there. Because I like ice skating. I just like to feel my gooch more. Because when it's frozen, it's just numbness, so I can't.
While fishing through a large hole he'd cut out of the ice, the fellow accidentally dropped his phone into the water. Clearly lacking in any notion of self-preservation, he dove straight into the hole after it. Unfortunately, he failed to realize that sudden submersion in ice-cold water can be pretty bad for the human body. It can send you into shock, can instantly paralyze your muscles if you haven't received training beforehand, and can even cause a heart attack due to intense constriction of your blood vessels. Whether one of these physiological problems took hold or whether he simply became disoriented under the ice remains unclear. All we know for sure is that he didn't re-emerge until several hours later, when emergency responders pulled his lifeless body from the water.
Well, look at the bright side. At least technically you didn't lose your contact list. We're gonna edit that out.
We can only assume he must have had a glorious collection of cute animal pics on his phone to make jumping into icy doom seem worth it.
Deepfake porn. Lots of deepfake
Lesson
porn.
not learned. As the COVID-19 pandemic came into full swing in 2020, it brought a lot of Darwin Award contenders out of the woodwork. One example occurred at a Serbian Orthodox church in November 2020, following the death of a high-ranking bishop. The bishop's death had been caused by coronavirus, yet the funeral held at the church showed no regard at all for the types of conditions that led to such an infection. The funeral was essentially a checklist of everything you shouldn't do if you want to avoid the disease. There was large crowds in an enclosed space, countless people being fed Holy Communion from the same unwashed spoon, and, of course, countless people kissing the hand of the recently deceased, who, I must reiterate, died of coronavirus. On top of that, there were only a handful of people wearing masks. In a twist you probably saw coming, almost immediately after the funeral, the church patriarch who'd organized and led the event also became seriously ill with COVID-19. He too died, having willingly failed to respect the advice of scientists on one of the most serious health disasters of the past 100 years. I just hope his funeral was a little more restrained.
Maybe. Only maybe.
Clotheslined. There are many dangers facing motorcyclists on the road, but one of the greatest of all is a rider's own recklessness. This was proven one morning in 2008, when one motorcyclist took the ride of a lifetime near Manasota Key in Florida. Witnesses reported seeing the risky rider, wearing nothing but swim trunks and sneakers, speeding towards the Manasota Key drawbridge.
The ride of a lifetime don't even sound good, unless it's involving like an in-shape, attractive female or something. I don't even. Baby, you should come to my house. It's the ride of a lifetime, because I've got syphilis.
Which was in the process of being raised up.
What?
He ignored the flashing red lights warning drivers to stay away from the bridge, and instead attempted to accelerate.
He was trying to Fast and Furious to it. They go over the bridge, but they make it because they use the NOS at the last second. He tried to do that.
hoping to jump the ever-growing gap.
Oh boy.
Newsflash, he didn't make it. He'd failed to spot the safety gate arms, which had already descended. He crashed head first straight into one of the gates and was instantly swept from his bike and onto the asphalt, while the bike itself continued up the ramp across the gap to the other side. While the rider failed to survive the ordeal, at least one of them made it across.
Yeah! Turn up! Hey, the bike made it! Hey!
Proving a point. On May 19, 1885, a man named Robert Emmett Odlum set out to be the first man to jump into New York City's East River from the Brooklyn Bridge. His reasons for this strange aspiration were surprisingly well-meaning for the most part. First and foremost, he sought to prove that, against the commonly held beliefs of the time, people did not die by simply falling through the air. He hoped this demonstration would encourage people to be willing to jump from burning buildings into a safety net in the incident of a fire, as people were too distrusting of this idea at the time. He also hoped to achieve some fame in proving it was safe. But unfortunately, any hopes he'd had of reassuring people about the safety of leaping from great heights were soon dashed when it came time to jump. As Odlum leapt from the bridge's roadway 130 feet up, he attempted to stay straight in the air, but a strong wind blew him into a diagonal angle of descent. This meant when he eventually struck the water, the angle of impact caused some serious damage. Slapping the water at approximately 62 miles per hour, it exerted enough force to rupture his spleen, liver, and kidneys, and break several of his ribs. The official cause of death, however, was declared to be concussion. On the bright side, people now know that rapidly falling doesn't kill you as much as the landing. In the words of British TV legend Jeremy Clarkson, speed has never killed anyone. Suddenly becoming stationary, that's what gets you.
Look at the bright side. At least no one played I Believe I Can Fly during the times when those guys was falling.
Hazard prevention. Sometimes you really have to wonder about people's sense of logic. Case in point, two guys who suddenly landed on the sense of hazard awareness after doing something incredibly dangerous and stupid back in 2002. In a farm field in Pennsylvania, two friends were practicing their marksmanship by shooting, not at bottles or cans, but the electrical insulators holding power lines aloft overhead. After shooting 6 of the insulators off of 2 utility poles, a live, high-voltage wire fell to the ground, risking setting the entire surrounding field ablaze.
Oh, wow.
Suddenly seized by an uncharacteristic sense of health and safety, one of the men rushed over to the wire and attempted to pick it up to move it to prevent danger. The instant he seized it in his hand, the powerful current passed through him and he was fatally electrocuted. The lesson? If you're going to suddenly grow a conscience, maybe try doing it before you do something lethally stupid. Safety first. The saying, "practice what you preach," has never been more ironically fitting than in the case of one man who met his untimely demise in Australia in 2017. While filming a forklift safety video, the owner of a safety training school was thrown from the forklift he was driving and fatally crushed by his payload. An investigation revealed that despite what the intentions of the video had been, the man had broken several crucial rules to forklift safety. He was driving over rough, uneven terrain at high speed, all while not wearing a seatbelt. Alongside an unhealthy sprinkling of driver error, it proved that sometimes you really should listen to your own advice. Don't go chasing waterfalls. And
that's not a TLC reference. I'm sick of people telling me that is. I don't even watch that network, bro. Get it together. Hot damn almighty, you get it together.
Most rational people can easily conclude, safety advice displayed at dangerous locations tend to be there for a reason. Not so bright people, however, often seem to have problems grasping this idea. This was proven by one woman on a pleasure trip to a natural waterfall at a tourist hotspot in Cauca, Colombia in January 2020. While searching for the perfect selfie angle, the woman ignored safety warnings about wandering too close to the edge of the waterfall. Paying more attention to her phone than where she was headed, she ended up plummeting over the waterfall's edge, straight down into the boulder and rock-filled pool below. The hard landing caused enough damage to her skull to set her expiry date to right there, right then. How many misguided lives will be lost before people finally learn selfies are never worth dying over?
Tell that to the people who used to plank for a living. Like 17 of those people died plank on the end of a cliff. What were you thinking?
Vending fatality. At some point, you may have heard you shouldn't shake a vending machine because it might fall on you, but nobody ever believes that's ever actually happened, right? Well, as it turns out, it actually did happen back in 1984 in Safety Harbor, Florida. As a newspaper article from the time recounts, a man had been attempting to get a can of soda from the vending machine in his apartment complex's recreation center. Whether he paid his cash and the machine failed to dispense his goods, or whether he just decided to shake it to try and get a free drink, remains unclear to this day.
That's a free drink shake, bro. I've lifted a couple of vending machines for free drinks. You'd be surprised how hard you gotta shake one of these things to not steal the soft drinks out of it. Pretty rough.
All that's known for sure is that an hour later, the thirsty fella was found utterly crushed with the vending machine on top of him. Yeesh. Going by this tale, if you want to stay safe, Safety Harbor is not the place to go.
Or just drink juice. Duh.
Especially if you're thirsty. Troublesome transport. In 2020, a poorly chosen seating arrangement on a bus resulted in the unexpected demise of several people in Manatu, India. While being transported to a wedding venue on a very overcrowded bus, several of the guests climbed up onto the rooftop for the ride.
No.
This was, of course, already a very risky idea, from the risk of falling off alone. But it wasn't a fall that proved to be these rooftop riders' ruin. Their downfall came, instead, in the form of some high-tension, relatively low-hanging electrical wires. At their lofty perch, the riders were at head level with the wires, and before they had the chance to react, 3 of them struck the exposed wire directly and were electrocuted. One was killed instantly. Another succumbed to his injuries later, while the third survived, albeit thoroughly fried. Next time, I've got a feeling he'll just wait for the next bus to come instead. Watching the skies. If an opportunity presented itself for you to communicate with extraterrestrials, would you take it? And
No.
if so, how far would you go to make sure you didn't let the chance pass you by?
No.
Well, one woman put the chance to commune with little green men above her own safety back in 1982. Believing she'd been contacted by some type of intergalactic power, she convinced a willing companion to accompany her in carrying out the instructions of her alien contact.
AKA a thirsty man. She found a dude who was hard up for vagina and told him, you know what, we're gonna go catch some aliens, and if you do, I'll think about it.
She claimed they'd commanded her to drive out to an isolated location in the northeastern Minnesota wilderness and await further instruction. Assuming this would be a hugely significant moment in the interstellar advancement of humankind, the pair did exactly that, despite the extremely snowy winter weather. Once parked up in the designated location, they dutifully awaited the arrival of their extraterrestrial acquaintances. And they waited, and waited, and waited. Unfortunately, their food supplies ran out after a week, and they lost access to water when the nearby lake froze over. Still, they refused to leave their post on the off chance that the aliens appeared while they were gone. Putting total faith in the idea that the aliens would appear before anything bad happened to either of them, they stayed in the freezing cold with nothing to eat or drink. Eventually, frozen, starving, and fatally dehydrated, the woman died. Shortly after, the man accompanying her, in his much weakened state and with the car having been rendered unusable by the icy conditions, crawled through a quarter-mile of snow to save himself. He survived, but his alien contacting partner did not, and their little green guests never showed up. I guess the aliens must have got the wrong address. Best seats in the house. For as long as there have been sports events requiring tickets, there have also been people trying to find ways to watch for free. This unfortunate tendency to save a bit of cash proved to be the quite literal downfall of a number of football fans in San Francisco back in 1900. To avoid the ticket fees, between 400 and 500 supporters clambered onto the roof of a glass factory so they could view a game taking place at San Francisco's nearby Old Recreation Park Stadium.
Of a glass factory? Nobody knew this was a bad idea?
But in a twist of fate that somehow occurred to none of them as a possibility, the factory roof proved incapable of supporting all that weight. 20 minutes after kickoff, not only did the roof collapse, but it also sent the revelers falling directly onto the blazing hot brick cover of a furnace vat filled with molten glass.
Oh my
To
God!
paint a picture of how hot this furnace was, several of the men who fell onto the cover instantly caught a blaze. 22 of the participants in this ill-thought-out plan were sent shuffling off this mortal coil from the incident, while 100 more suffered serious injuries. While people today may still not have learned their lesson to always pay for tickets, they seem to have learned not to pile en masse onto factory roofs in the years since.
Not ones that are made of glass, you fool!
Deadliest catch. Being a magician can be a dangerous job at times, particularly if you specialize in risky-looking illusions. While many classic nail-biting tricks are often much safer than they seem, some of them are genuinely hazardous if not followed correctly, like catching a bullet tricks. Now, obviously, tricks of this category, under normal circumstances, are never actually supposed to involve real bullets being fired by a magician's assistant. But in 1889, an early performer of this trick had a serious mishap on stage. Magician and cabinet maker Michael Hattal took to the stage, promising his audience he could catch a speeding bullet using nothing more than the American flag wrapped around his body. He called an assistant up to the stage and asked him to pick 2 pieces of ammunition from an ammo box for Hattal to load into a rifle. At this point, Hattal would usually switch out the rounds for blanks, but on this occasion, he accidentally swapped the real ammo for more ammo. The volunteer took aim and fired, delivering a fatal blow to the unfortunate performer. Luckily, Hattal survived just long enough to take responsibility for the blunder, clearing the volunteer's name on his deathbed. On the bright side, he certainly gave the audience a performance they'd remember.
No. A magic trick you could only perform one time.
Man versus cactus. Stay.
Is it sexual?
The topic of firearm mishaps now, we have the story of one man who lost a shootout against a stationary target. In 1982, a couple of petty criminals headed out into Arizona's Sonoran Desert for a decidedly dumb purpose, shooting at cacti. Their targets of choice were the local saguaro cacti, which can grow well over 40 feet tall, a fact which should have probably raised some alarm bells. But it didn't, and the tremendous size and weight of each cactus only made them more appealing targets. The first cactus was shot down without incident, thanks to the powerful blast of a 16-gauge shotgun. But the second target was larger, at almost 30 feet tall. One of the cactus vandals moved into point-blank range to deliver the kill shot, pulled the trigger, and brought huge chunks of the 2-ton spiky behemoth raining down upon himself. He was killed almost instantly by the weight of the spiky chunks that landed on him, while his buddy lived to share the tale. I suppose the moral of the story is, don't bring a gun to a cactus fight. Something to lean on. In August 2020, an attempt to pose for a picture in an unusual spot ended very badly, showing just why you should be careful what you lean on. The photo opportunity in question occurred for one man at a large statue of a cross in Sao Paulo, Brazil. The man climbed up the central concrete column of the cross and onto one of the arms, where he posed for a picture giving a thumbs up. However, he overestimated the strength of the upper beam, which he leant against while the picture was being taken. As he leant on it, the beam came loose and toppled right over, sending it and the man falling straight down to the ground. A particularly nasty landing waited for him at the bottom, and to make matters worse, the heavy beam landed right on top of him, with the man's religious photo opportunity ultimately proving fatal. If there is a god, it looks like he doesn't appreciate selfies. Alligator affection. Sometimes, the universe seems to have a funny tendency of punishing people who put too much faith in their own good luck, particularly those who willingly put themselves in unbelievably dangerous situations, like one woman who put too much faith in her ability to not get eaten by hungry wild animals in Kiowa Island, South Carolina in May 2020. While in a drunken state, the woman decided to get waist-deep in a local pond, which she knew was home to an alligator. This was despite the friend who watched from horror at the shore warning her the gator had been observed chowing down on a live deer a few days earlier. Instead of taking that as a sign of the gator's killing power, the woman instead retorted, "I don't look like a deer," and waded over to pet the reptile. The gator, of course, wasn't too keen on this idea and grabbed her with its powerful jaws.
Delicious.
Miraculously, the woman managed to break free and began wading back.
No, don't tell me she lived. Because the last thing you want is someone that dumb reproducing. You want kids that are running into zoo encagements. I'm gonna pet the tigers, nigga. You know what I'm saying? Like, no, you gotta get her out of here now. Like,
back to the shore, telling her friend, "I guess I won't do that again." And she was technically right, because she wouldn't have the chance. Why? Because the gator grabbed her again while she was retreating and dragged her below the water to her demise. Unfortunately, one very important realization came all too late to this woman. You don't mess with alligators.
Congratulations, we got him. Rickety Rouse are coming, we got this, yeah!
A dangerous mix. In the world of lethal combinations, there are few dangerous pairings more obvious than water and electricity. But some people totally failed to grasp that fact. Like one man in New York, who grew impatient after a storm damaged some power lines along his street, leaving him without electricity. Somehow, he'd landed on the idea that he'd be able to fix the problem easily if he could just remove the downed wires and replace them himself. Assuming he knew better than the emergency workers guarding the downed wires to keep the public safe, the man repeatedly attempted to gain access to them. But after being shooed away several times, he decided to wait until the cover of darkness, at which point he returned to the site. With plastic bags on his feet for what he must have assumed was total protection from any electric threats, he began his idea of a fix. Attempting to fast-track the repairs, he tried to cut off part of the downed wire with an industrial power saw, while absent-mindedly standing on the wet, puddle-covered floor left by the storm. As his saw reached the metal core of the wire, which he'd failed to realize was still live, his body and the wet puddle his feet were in provided the perfect circuit to the ground. He was electrocuted with a full force of 4,800 volts. Needless to say, while his determination to help was commendable, a human body just wasn't made to endure that kind of a shock. In a moment of lethal stupidity, the DIY moment proved fatal, well and truly earning this man a Darwin Award.
Juicy Jenga.
I thought he was about to say Juicy J. I was like, no, Juicy J died? Oh, God, I love his green Supreme skull jacket.
Back in April 2022, a thirsty thief in the city of Catalica, Italy, ended up in a situation that was more than he could swallow. On the Easter Monday, he decided to break into a clearly closed grocery store and grab himself a drink. But instead of pulling a bottle from one of the shelves, he chose to grab a bottle from a huge tower of crates that had been stacked up by the staff. And not just any bottle, one from a crate right in the middle. Anyone who's ever played Jenga knows this is a rookie error. And as you probably guessed, the entire stack collapsed, crushing him beneath all that water weight. He wasn't found until the next day when store staff had to go back through the CCTV footage to figure out what caused all this chaos. Well, one thing's for sure. He did a great job of winning this Darwin Award.
Did a great job.
Clown School.
How you die in clown
Can
school?
you juggle?
No.
No matter how many times I've tried, I always end up with more balls on the floor than there are in the air.
We call that street meat where I'm from. Very street, very meat.
Now, I've seen juggling masters that can yeet swords, fire sticks, even chainsaws up into the air with confidence. Worst comes to worst, they can only really risk hurting themselves. Me? I'll use little beanbags, balls, maybe even eggs if I'm feeling extra spicy. But you know what smart people and even experts won't touch? Grenades. I mean, juggling grenades, that's the dumbest thing I think I've ever heard. No one would be dumb enough to do that, right? Right?
What?
Let's rewind to 2001 and head over to Vidovic, Croatia, where a bunch of college students were having a big old party. One of them decided to try and impress his friends by juggling a few items, one of which was, you guessed it, a hand grenade. I'm honestly struggling to follow the logic here, but having pulled the pin, he proceeded to juggle with the live explosive. Now, grenades work via a chemical reaction, giving the thrower a few precious seconds to get out of range before it explodes. This guy, for whatever reason, didn't think this applied to him, and the grenade exploded as he was juggling it.
Oh!
The blast injured 6 equally dumb onlookers, but our Darwin Award winner was removed from the gene pool completely. Well, he might have been acting like a clown, but this guy ended up proving he was the entire circus. Car wash cretin. Chances are you've been through an automated car wash before, right? Okay, what's the first rule of using an automated car wash?
Don't hang your junk out of the passenger seat window in hopes at a chance of some sexual pleasure that the spinning brushes might make happen. A friend of mine tells me it is an awful idea, and he didn't even get close to getting the finish. I don't know what race he was in, but I would be pissed if I didn't win it either.
No, it isn't record a TikTok. It's don't get out of the car. No, seriously, machinery in some of these places is incredibly powerful and can cause serious injuries or worse. Back in April 2022 in San Diego, a man drove into an automated car wash and then, without starting up the cycle, tried to get out of his vehicle while his car was still in gear. Apparently dragged by the vehicle, he ended up fatally pinned in between the left side of his car and the car wash machinery. But here's the thing, no one can explain why he decided to get out of the car. Was there a bee in there with him? Did he think the automated part of the wash meant he didn't need to be in his vehicle? Whatever it was, his car came out the other side of the washer, much messier than before. Pretty fly for a dead guy. Back in November 2021, a student pilot from Houston, Texas was allowed by his instructor to fly solo in a Cessna 172 light aircraft for the first time ever. Absolutely exhilarated by the experience, he went out and bought himself a brand new plane, a Piper PA-28140, despite not having a full license yet. His instructor clearly told him that he still needed more tutorage before he'd be able to fly solo regularly, and even more so before he could fly his new plane. However, our student wasn't one for rules. It turns out there are quite a few things student pilots can't do. These include fly with a passenger in the aircraft, fly at night, without endorsement from the instructor, fly when it's foggy with limited visibility, and fly a different model of aircraft than what's on their license and less specifically endorsed by their instructor. Can you guess how many of these rules the student broke?
All of
If
them.
you guessed all of them, go get yourself a cookie.
I
One
deserve
very
it.
foggy evening, he decided to take a friend of his up in his brand new aircraft without telling his instructor. Roughly 4 minutes after taking off, unable to see properly, the plane clipped some nearby treetops, crashing moments later. Neither the student nor passenger survived. Guess he wasn't as fly as he thought he was.
Damn.
All aboard the pain train. I love a good mystery, don't you? Well, back on the 15th of December 2009, that's exactly what the staff of Germany's U2 subway were faced with. A subway driver was trundling along in his train car when suddenly he spotted the body of a man laying over the tracks. After getting over the shock, confusion set in. How had he gotten here? With the regularity of the trains, there was no way he could have hopped off a platform, run down the tracks, and made it as far as he did. Had he jumped off the back of a moving subway car? And if he had, then why? It didn't make any sense. Because there was no surveillance footage at the location, the police were stumped. But then they discovered that one of the cars on the subway train that had passed over the tracks before the driver discovered the body had a single smashed window.
Oh no.
And suddenly it all made sense. This idiot had been alone in the subway car and decided, in all his brilliance, to swing from the handrail and smash one of the windows with his feet. After a couple of attempts, he succeeded, and then was promptly pulled out of the moving train thanks to the suction created by the train moving at speed through the tunnel. Nice. Real smart move there. Well, if ever you needed a really good reason not to damage public property, here it is. Killer
Damn.
pain. There are people out there who will do just about anything to get their hands on a couple of or potent pills, if you know what I mean. And I mean anything. Case in point, back in 2009, a Minnesota man figured that he could get his hands on some narcotic pain medication for free if he staged an accident and went to the hospital. Safe to say this guy wasn't the brightest bulb in the box. Nevertheless, he figured if he jumped out of a moving car, the injuries he sustained would ensure the doctors would have to give him the pain meds he craved. So our mastermind revved up his car, started driving, and then jumped out of the moving vehicle. There was just one hitch in his plan. It's hard to ask for pain meds when you're dead. Yep, the injuries he sustained from this stupid plot were so severe, he perished at the scene. Well, I haven't got any pain meds on me, but I do have the next best thing. Here you go, my guy. You can have this Darwin Award instead.
And a coffin.
Fireworks. Lunar New Year's in Kuala Lumpur is really something to behold. The fireworks set against the glittering lights of the city make for a magical night. The thing is, most types of fireworks are actually banned in Malaysia because of the flammable substances they contain. This means most fireworks displays are done illegally, and a lot of the locals don't know how they work, or how to use the industrial scale ones they can illicitly get their hands on. It was for exactly this reason that our next Darwin Award winner joined our ever-growing list. On 2005's Lunar New Year, a man was watching people set off industrial-scale fireworks that shot more than 150 feet into the air outside a club in suburban Kuala Lumpur. Curious, the man decided to get a better look at these powerful fireworks and bent face first over one of the launching tubes they were shooting out of. He was peering down the tube when one came screeching out into his face, sending him flying 30 feet backwards and giving him a few fatal head injuries. Now that's what you call a celebratory send-off. Need a lift? There's nothing wrong with going above and beyond for your job, but sometimes you have to watch just how far you go, as one janitor back in 1999 discovered. He was cleaning his building's elevator one day when he noticed something dripping from the ceiling. So eager to do a good job, he rode the second elevator up the shaft, climbed out a hidden service door, and stepped onto the roof of the first elevator. He began mopping up the puddle when all of a sudden, the elevator jolted. In his rush to get to the leak, he'd forgotten to immobilize the first elevator. Unable to do anything, the first elevator rose to the very top of the shaft, crushing him at the top. I don't envy the next janitor that had to clean up that mess. Saw that coming. Copper theft is a huge problem all over the world. Because of its ability to conduct electricity, it's become an incredibly sought-after building material, especially in the last few years. From January 2020 to May 2021, copper prices in the UK soared by an average of 74%, increasing from around £6,100 to about £10,750 per ton. This hasn't gone unnoticed by thieves, who have taken to stripping construction sites, buildings, even railways of the valuable material however they can. But not all these thieves work with Mission Impossible levels of precision during their raids, as one Scottish man proved back in 2001. The electric trains running across Glasgow collect power from an overhead cable. Any excess electricity is transmitted through a solid copper cable lining the rails, which is then routed to a distribution box. Our man, who appeared to have a good knowledge of these electrical systems, planned to saw this cable up in the time between the trains passing when no electricity was traveling through it. Pretty well thought out, and he might have gotten away with it as well were it not for one small, tiny, insignificant issue. The timetable he'd based his brilliant plan on was out of date. As he was sawing, the train began approaching 10 minutes before he'd expected it to. Thousands of volts of electricity suddenly jolted through his body, charring him to a crisp. Let's hope would-be thieves out there take this as a sign. A pretty shocking one at that. Cop shot. I'd like to think I'm pretty good at breaking down stories and explaining things so that everyone can understand them. This is something that back in 1993, a police officer in Illinois reportedly attempted to do, but it ended the worst way just about anything can. Another officer from their precinct had accidentally discharged their firearm into their stomach, unintentionally ending themselves the week before. In trying to explain how that was possible to his fellow officer, our cop in question decided to reenact the scenario. The Darwin Award winner pulled out his gun, aimed it at his stomach, and pulled the trigger. The only issue was that he forgot there was a bullet in the chamber, and he didn't have the safety on. Apparently he didn't survive. Hopefully no one in the precinct thought to reenact this reenactment.
Motherfucker.
Shoot your shot. Florida. Any American worth their salt knows that the citizens of this state are, without a doubt, some of the weirdest in the entire country. From organizing mass Facebook events to shoot down hurricanes, to painting political messages on crabs, their
Hillary
bizarreness
is a
knows
lying
no bounds.
fish.
Seriously, if it's a dumb idea, someone in Florida has probably tried it. Which is what brings us to our next entrant. Back in April 2022, 3 bored teenagers decided to cook up some fun by using some body armor and, in true American style, a handgun. It's not clear where they got the gun, but the teenagers took turns wearing the body armor and shooting each other, recording the whole thing and uploading it to Snapchat. I think we can all see where this is going. Yep, one of them donned the armor and laid himself out like a human target, but the other teen's aim was ever so slightly off, hitting him fatally in a part of his chest that wasn't covered by the vest. Panicked, the 2 remaining teenagers called an ambulance and reported the shooting. But then, in an even dumber move, they tried to delete the videos from their Snapchat and lied about what had happened. It didn't take long for an IT specialist to find the video, which made the entire situation look even worse than it already was. Hey kids, top tip here. If you're bored, go play a video game. Don't shoot your friends for Snapchat clout and then dig your own grave by lying about it. Considering these 2 are being tried as adults and could end up spending the rest of their lives behind bars, I'm going to give them 2 honorary Darwin Awards also. Nice one, boys. Doing Florida proud.
This nigga ain't shit. Nice one, boys. Doing Florida proud.
MacBook mistake. While I dragged those previous trigger-happy morons over the coals for their dumb gun safety behavior, their stupidity is nothing compared to another bullet-related Darwin Award. Back in March 2022, a Russian soldier in an active Ukrainian war zone came across an abandoned MacBook. Now, he wanted the MacBook, but he didn't have anywhere on his person to store it. No problem, he thought. I'll just remove the ballistic breastplate of my body armor and put the MacBook in there. Now, for those who don't know, MacBooks can't stop bullets. You know what can? A specially designed ballistic breastplate. But hey, it wasn't like he was going to get shot in, the active war zone he was in the middle of. Safe to say this stupid soldier didn't make it out of Ukraine alive. When Ukrainian soldiers eventually retrieved his body, they not only found the MacBook, but they also apparently found a stolen iPad as well. From the moronic logic this guy was employing, I wouldn't be surprised if he tried to use the tablet as a helmet. Fire ants. When police arrived at the scene in Rome, New York back in 2001, they struggled to understand what they were seeing. A woman's body was on fire in the grassy area adjacent to her home, and while there was a lighter and melted gas can discovered nearby, there was no immediate sign of foul play.
Oh my God, this freaking idiot got swarmed with ants and then tried to set herself on fire in order to get rid of the ants and ended up getting rid of her own damn self. Sounds about right.
Despite investigating the incident for months, the police turned up nothing and eventually came to the only logical explanation available. This woman had been smoking a cigarette and, according to her neighbors, indulging in her habit of dousing anthills in her yard with gasoline. While she was holding the gas can, an ember from the cigarette fell into the gasoline stream, which quickly ignited and traveled up the stream, bursting the can and immolating the woman in an instant. Guess that makes it ants 1, Karen 0.
Oh!
Superhuman stupidity. How strong do you think you are? Are you down at the gym every day pumping iron? Or does your body look like it's been made out of toothpicks? Whatever it is, I think we can all agree there are very few people on Earth that possess the raw strength needed to stop a car in its tracks. With an average car weighing in at a little over 4,000 pounds, you'd need superhuman strength to go toe-to-toe with any metal beast. But that thought didn't come across one man's mind back in 2001. Apparently, having parked his car at the edge of a reservoir in Fresno, California, he got out only to watch as his car slowly rolled forward towards the water's edge. Now, the logical thing here would be to jump into the car and put it in park, right? Well, this guy had another idea. He leapt in front of the car as it rolled forward, assuming he'd be strong enough to act as some sort of immovable object.
Wow!
But he thought a bit too much of himself and the car just rolled over him, pinning him beneath the water, and he didn't survive. But his story does serve as a reminder that man cannot win a fight against a moving car, no matter how strong he thinks he is. jet-fueled idiocy. We've all taken a wrong turn at some point in our lives, but when there are multiple stop signs, warning signals, and traffic lights, quickly turning back is the logical answer. Though it wasn't for a taxi driver in Rio de Janeiro back in the year 2002. Having dropped off a fare at the Santos Dumont Airport, the taxi driver decided to follow the road around, assuming it'd lead away from the airport at some point. But soon he was confronted by sign after sign telling him he was actually approaching the runway. Flashing lights warned him a plane was on the runway and ready to take off, but apparently ignoring this, the taxi drove straight on. Despite the completely unobscured 737 passenger jet on the runway about to take off, he continued his journey behind it when both the plane's engines revved up. At their peak, each 737 jet engine can produce a huge 50,000 pounds of thrust. And as you probably figured out, a single taxi is no match for all that force. The engines blew the taxi away, flipping it more than 80 feet into the nearby sea. It was a brief journey that the driver didn't survive. I guess the moral of this story is, don't drive right behind a jet plane that's about to take off? Is that not already a given? Falling for you.
Oh, hell no.
Usually when you see reams of safety tape blocking off an area, it's a pretty clear sign that you should avoid that area, right? Doesn't matter what's happening inside, it's been blocked off for an important reason. Well, despite this being a pretty universal understanding, back in 2004, there was a man in South Africa who decided to ignore this entirely. Emphasis on the was. He was sitting in a cafe watching a team of lumberjacks across the way with loud chainsaws cutting down some large, heavy-looking trees. They'd cordoned off the area with tape, ensuring no one would be accidentally smushed by the falling timber. Despite this, our man suddenly made a beeline for the area, ducking under the tape to use the pavement to meet his girlfriend in a nearby shop. And at that exact moment, a huge tree the lumberjacks had quite clearly been working on came crashing down. Despite their frantic shouts, the guy ignored them and kept walking forward and was, kinda obviously, crushed by the tree. Crushed on the way to meet his crush. If it weren't so stupid, it'd almost be poetic.
Beautiful.
All natural causes. I'm terrible at taking racy pictures. I never know what pose to strike or what lingerie to wear. Jokes aside, there was one man in Germany who definitely didn't have these issues. Not only was this guy happy to take photos of himself completely nude, but he also took these photos out in public, and we know this for the same reason he ended up with a Darwin Award. Back in September 2000, our man was in his birthday suit in the medieval city of Rothenburg, taking photos of himself on top of a high stone wall. He set up his camera on a tripod, hopped up on the wall, and started pulling a few poses when suddenly he lost his balance and fell 16 feet onto the ground below. The police apparently had to develop the film of the camera to piece this case together, and I bet they were hoping he'd accidentally left the lens cap on. A buttload of sherry. Alcoholism is a terrible disease, with an estimated 107 million people all over the world suffering from some form of alcohol use disorder. But back in 2004, a man from Texas found a unique way to take his disorder to a whole other level. He had a throat ailment, which meant that swallowing anything acidic was quite a painful process.
I think I might have read this one in a book somewhere. He had his wife funnel alcohol directly into his anus. Apparently that's the best way to do it if you're trying to get so drunk that you die of alcohol poisoning.
So he opted to take his liquor, rectally.
Oh boy.
This guy would give himself alcohol enemas. An enema is where you inject liquid into the rectum to stimulate the cleaning of the bowel. However, these liquids can also be taken into the body by way of the bloodstream, which is how our man opted to consume his spirits. One night, he was planning to have one hell of a party by buying 2 1.5-liter bottles of sherry and hooking them up for a, butt chug? Now, usually, when we've had enough to drink, we just stop drinking, or we pass out. Well, our guy had definitely had enough and passed out mid-alcohol enema. However, there was still a lot of sherry all up in his junk, which continued to be absorbed into his bloodstream long after he fell unconscious. By the next morning, he'd basically embalmed himself. Now, it's legal to drive if your blood alcohol content is below 0.08%. That's roughly 1 drink. At about 6 to 10 standard drinks in, your blood alcohol level is around 0.20%, and you generally need assistance walking. Vomiting and blacking out is also on the cards. Alcohol poisoning and a loss of consciousness sets in when your blood alcohol content is at around 0.25%, which is like consuming 20 to 30 standard drinks. At 0.40%, your body begins to shut down irreversibly. And our Darwin Award winner's blood alcohol content was a staggering 0.47%. Wow, this guy must have had bowels of steel. Live wire. When inmate Michael Godwin had his death penalty commuted to a life sentence, he was grateful to be able to walk away from death row. But it seems that karma had other plans. One night in 1989, he discovered the television in his cell was broken, and deciding to fix it himself, embarked on a little DIY. Foolishly, he thought it would be a great idea to use his teeth instead of a wire cutter. Biting down on a live wire, he electrocuted himself, not helped by the fact that he was sitting on a metal toilet at the time. Godwin managed to escape the electric chair, but it seems destiny was intent on seeing him die by electrocution. Number 19. Airless Airhead. When a Brazilian farmer discovered a beehive on his property in 2002, he knew precisely two things. Bees can sting, and they need to be removed with fire. No one knows why he decided that fire was his best option. All we do know is that he fashioned a makeshift helmet from a plastic bag to save himself from both the smoke and the bee stings. But besides all his careful planning, he didn't bother to think that he might have to breathe. And
this idiot didn't poke a blowhole in the trash bag he was wearing on his face.
He thought he made an oxygen bubble.
He been watching too much SpongeBob SquarePants, nigga. That shit don't work for everybody other than Sandy, nigga.
Failed to poke air holes into the plastic bag. When he didn't return home, his wife set out to find him and soon discovered him suffocated beneath the beehive. He was untouched by the bees, though. Number 18. Chimney grenade. One afternoon in 2005, Marco decided to clean the chimney in his workshop, but when he tried to use a simple broom, he realized it was too small for the job. Clearly, he had to improvise. He decided what he needed was a chain to pull the broom through the chimney and a heavy object to weigh it down. Looking in his workshop, he thought he'd found the perfect thing: a grenade. All he had to do now was weld it to the broom and chain. Except he failed to think about what could happen as he switched on his welding equipment. As soon as the flame met the grenade, it exploded, killing him instantly. The chimney, however, was left completely untouched by the blast. Number 7.
He deserved to die. He deserved to die,
Why
man.
does this nigga have a grenade in his workhouse?
17. Behind enema lines. Texas shop owner Michael was an alcoholic, but not an ordinary one. Due to a painful throat condition, he couldn't drink through his mouth. This meant he had to find other ways to consume his liquor, and his wife said he soon became addicted to enemas. This popular method is far more dangerous, as alcohol is absorbed directly through the capillaries in the rectum. So one night he wanted to get blind drunk and decided the only way to do it was to pour 100 fluid ounces of sherry up his rear end. What he didn't know was that after he'd passed out, the alcohol kept absorbing and he was dead by the morning.
Why is he black? I didn't expect for him to be black.
That must have hurt. Alcohol up the hole?
Probably not to him. He was on that other shit.
The toxicology report stated he had a blood alcohol level of 0.47%, meaning he'd pretty much embalmed himself. Number 16. Parking brake fail. When we're constantly reminded to recycle, plastic bags can be a source of annoyance. So when a 58-year-old Australian woman was driving to the grocery store and thought she'd forgotten her plastic bags, she promptly stopped her car to check the trunk. If only she was more worried about her parking than she was about her grocery bags, she would have remembered to put the handbrake on. As she checked the trunk, the car began rolling backwards, crushing her to death. Somehow she managed to run herself over. Number 15.
With their own car!
Irresponsible. A Romanian man in 2002 decided he would skip checking the local train schedules and instead deduce if the train was coming through the power of his own ears.
Oh boy.
Lying on the railway line, he pressed his ears to the tracks to hear if the train was approaching.
Really
Clearly his hearing wasn't all he thought it was, because he never heard it coming. He was hit by an oncoming express train and died immediately. Number 14. Lava La Vida Loca. Don't you just hate it when your lava lamp doesn't heat up quickly enough? Well, 24-year-old Philip did. After plugging in his lava lamp and waiting a few minutes, he was disappointed to see that nothing was happening. Eager to get it working, he decided to speed up the process by placing it on a hot stove. But with the contents of a lava lamp only being designed to withstand temperatures of up to 40 degrees...
It's lava, ain't it?
That's not how it works.
Everyone knows that lava can be reheated on an open flame. Huh? This is smart way to do this.
It quickly overheated and exploded.
Oh my
Poor
God.
Philip was killed when the glass from the lamp shattered and penetrated his heart. Not so groovy. Number 13. Under pressure. Two bored comrades in a Romanian aluminum factory decided to have some
Oh
fun
my
with
God.
an air hose actually used for industrial machinery.
Hey, they
When
let these
blowing
hoes
dust
too.
off their clothes became boring, they cranked things up a notch and decided to remove their clothes entirely.
They tried having sex with the blowholes. Damn, man.
Things quickly moved below the belt when one of the guys decided he was going to see what happened when he pumped 6 bars of atmospheric pressure into his anus. Not only did he break employment regulations, but he also...
Oh no.
In what alternate universe of Marvel Capcom history does shoving a bunch of air into Uranus end good?
I don't even want to know what that looks like catching somebody do that in person.
What was the expected end result? Did like come out of his nose?
Blow up?
We gonna see.
Not only did he break employment regulations, but he also broke right through his intestinal tract and he died within minutes from severe internal hemorrhaging. Number 12.
Painful way to
Danger
die.
Zone. In
Danger
2017,
zone.
2 United States Navy pilots got a little
His
too
insides
carried away
exploded.
with Top Gun when
Oh,
they
God.
decided to completely abandon safety regulations to perform daredevilish stunts. Reaching astonishing speeds while flying as low as 210 feet, a good 300
Oh, my
feet below
God.
their minimum permitted altitude, things were bound to take a downward turn as they swapped controls back and forth. Descending too low and slow, one of the pilots traded off controls to his co-pilot, but it was too late. The T-45C Goshawk crashed before they could safely eject themselves. Instructing pilot Lieutenant Birch was fond of the phrase, "There are old pilots and there are bold pilots." He failed to mention that there are also outrageously dumb ones. Number 11. Cruise control. The fastest human can run over 27 miles per hour. But that's only after accelerating during a run-up. A Dutch teenager in 2004 thought he could do better than that and get close to that speed straight away. In a bid to impress his friends, he set his car to cruise control at 20 miles per hour and told them he was going to jump out and run alongside the car before jumping back in and driving away. But his shocked friends could only look on as he stepped out the moving car and immediately smashed his head on the tarmac. He died the following day. Number 10.
Nigga.
Treasure Hunt. Described as the world's largest treasure hunt, the geocaching app allows people to follow online clues and
fucked up to
find
laugh?
small treasure
is
boxes
not.
known as
You have to
geocaches
laugh.
hidden in their area. Sounds like harmless
Otherwise, they won't learn no lesson. You have to laugh at people that finish themselves off in this type of manner. How else are they gonna learn to do any better?
until someone decides to head down a flooded waterway in search of trinkets. When meteorologists warned the Czech Republic of impending rainstorms, most people paid attention. But not this group of geocachers who thought it would be clever to climb into an underground waterworks tunnel. Although 2 members of the group survived, 2 others were swept away, with 1 young man still reported missing.
Number 9.
Delicious.
Dying for a smoke.
Ooh.
Nobody likes long bus journeys. They're cramped and boring, not to mention you're basically sharing a tin can with dozens of strangers in their farts. One Scottish woman especially hated the idea of spending 12 hours stuck on a coach from Glasgow to London without a cigarette. Passengers reported that she grew increasingly agitated and watched in horror as she began throwing herself at the passenger door. The bus was traveling at 60 miles per hour when she tumbled out into the road before falling under the wheels of the bus. Smoking really does kill.
Number 8.
Damn, bitch.
Footrest. Most people go to the movies to see the drama unfold on the screen. Not
Beat
beside
stuff.
them. When a local man booked tickets in the VIP area of the cinema complex, he was hoping for a good time. What he got instead was a ticket to the Darwin Awards. After dropping his phone beneath his seat, he tried to retrieve it, only to get his head wedged inside the footrest. If this wasn't bad enough, he then suffered a cardiac arrest and died in hospital. Number
What?
7. Victoria Falls. 50-year-old Michael was a clever man. Not only was he a college headmaster, he was also a respected geography lecturer on the conferences circuit. While on a trip to the Victoria Falls Bridge, he was happily taking photos of his girlfriend when he dropped his glasses over the edge. Thinking he wouldn't be able to enjoy the view of the glorious Victoria Falls without them, he tried to retrieve them, only to fall 40 feet to his death. Number 6. Killer Whalebone. This historic entry in
At least let it be your cell phone, bro. Shit, like that's respectable. You know what I'm saying? Don't die for some bifocals, homie.
Save the nudes.
Like, yeah, bitch, I got nudes on there. No, Jessica, no.
Into the Darwin Award sees another clever man, founding father of the USA, Governor Morris, come to an untimely end through an eye-watering DIY medical procedure. When Morris began suffering from a blockage in his urethra, he took matters into his own hands.
No.
Inserting a whalebone into his urethra, all he managed to do was give himself a deadly infection. He died November 6, 1816. Probably feeling pretty silly. Number 5. Distracted driver. 58-year-old Clifford Jones was driving without a seatbelt. He was also driving without pants. When a regular drive just wasn't interesting enough, he decided to watch a bit of adult content on his phone and have some fun. If
This douchebag decided to beat his meat mobily? How close did he get? He was whipping the Tesla while whipping other stuff. Oh, goodness.
If only he'd kept his hands on the wheel. With the blood rushing away from his head, he grew increasingly distracted and lost control of his car. As it crashed, he hurtled through the sunroof and died on impact.
I bet he died in the doggy style position. Ass naked, butt right up in the air. Good Lord.
Number 4. Posing with a grenade.
Oh, boy.
Faking a smile, posing with angry animals, posing with a primed grenade. All things people will do for attention online.
People aren't smart.
Yes, you heard me right. In 2017, Alexander Sasha Chechik from Russia pulled the pin out of a hand grenade while in his car and posted photographs of himself holding it to his girlfriend, probably as a way to show off his balls of brainless steel. A source who spoke to the Russian news service reporting the incident said, "The guy didn't manage to insert the hand grenade pin back in. The pin is the safety mechanism. It's the lever on the side of the firing mechanism that activates the grenade when released. However, it's still not worth risking it by removing the pin." Police categorized his death as an accident and not suicide, as they believed he thought it wouldn't explode as long as he didn't throw it. Number 3. Bear.
Isn't that the way it works?
Even if you take the pin out, there's still a timer. Like, you can't hold it for mad long.
Oh my God, I didn't know that.
Yeah, like what? You got like 5 seconds to throw that bitch after the shit's out.
Well, now I know I won't be holding any hand grenades.
Bear selfie. Prabhu Bhattara
Yeah,
from India was
cocaine
on his way
bear.
home from a wedding when he spotted a black bear. Seeing this as
Why the bear gotta be black? Y'all see the little stuff they be doing? They be peppering it into the content now. Yep, stay woke.
a great photo opportunity, he got close to the bear and attempted to take a selfie with it. As he did, the bear mauled him. He died shortly after due to his injuries. My advice, stay far away from bears. They may be cute, but if you photograph them at an angle that makes them look fat, it's game over.
Yeah.
Number 2. Sawing into a grenade. 2 pathologists
Again?
at a German symposium
Another
dinner
one.
told the tale of a man who stumbled across a World War II grenade.
We the
Instead of
best
staying well
music.
clear, he wanted to open it up to see how it worked. Back
No.
home, he placed it inside a vise and tried to saw it perfectly in half. The saw detonated the grenade and the man died from a fatal head injury. Upon post-mortem, it was discovered there was very little brain matter left inside his skull, although
Yep.
the 2 pathologists joked that there couldn't have been much to start with. Before we get to our
Damn.
number 1 dumbest Darwin Award, here are a few
That's
honorable mentions.
funny.
There's this man who planked
What?
on a tiger. There's no way he walked away from that one. Then there's this guy who bit a tiger's tail. Wait, is that the same guy? Poor tiger. Oh, and this woman who got something stuck in her handgun. Nice.
Nut.
Okay, so back to the final award in our countdown. Number 1. Smoking Hot. Gary Banning from North Carolina was at his friend's house when he spotted a mysterious jar of tasty-looking liquid. Assuming it was hot sauce and without bothering to check, he flipped off the lid and started to drink it. But he soon discovered it wasn't hot sauce at all.
Yep, I was refrigerating my poop for a science project. Joke's on you, but if you didn't add sugar, I'll tell you this, it's not gonna be a good day for you.
But a jar of gasoline.
Terrible.
The shock of chugging gasoline was too
Gasoline?
much for Gary, so he spat it out, then tried to calm down with a cigarette. As soon as he lit it, he caught fire and died the next day from his injuries. So
What?
which of these Darwin Award winners do you think is the
Motherfucker.
runway cyclist? Unless you've got ET in your basket, you probably shouldn't be cycling on an airport runway. This advice
the hell?
never reached Brazilian cyclist Marcelo, who was crossing an airfield near
Nigga.
Sao Paulo while listening to his Walkman. Yes, it was 1997, but that's no excuse. The 25-year-old was totally clueless as he collided with the propeller of a landing.
Oh,
Oh.
how did you get on the
Shredded cheese his ass.
plane, mangling the blades and damaging the wing in the process.
The plane probably did see him. I would have kept going. I beat my horn. He should have moved. What?
I'd usually say wear a helmet, folks, but in this case, I'm not sure that would have helped.
Yeah.
Number 16, fast food fatality. In an
that burger
attempt to
looked
rip
ugly.
off their workplace, 2 managers at Burger King cooked up a whopper of a plan, staging a fake robbery and arson in order to steal over $4,000 from the restaurant.
Motherfucker. Bro, that's like 2 months worth of living expenses if you're frugal. What are you doing?
22-year-old night manager Lisa was bound with duct tape and shut into the walk-in cooler by her accomplice. Unluckily for Lisa, the fire department didn't show up until the morning, when she was found freezing and semi-conscious. She later died in the hospital from hypothermia. According to investigators, Lisa could have easily freed herself from her bindings and escaped the unlocked refrigerator, which is exactly why she makes the list. Number 15. Tiger toy. Playing with your food is an unattractive habit, but some creatures just can't help it. A mugger in South Africa found this out the hard way after robbing a couple at knife
You gonna rob a bitch at safety pinpoint? That's some thug shit. I never thought to do that.
point. The mugger fled the scene and clambered over a nearby fence.
Oh, shit.
What he'd
Yep.
forgotten was that he was at Bloemfontein Zoo, and
Mother
the fences
shit.
were there for a reason.
Motherfuckers.
Suddenly, an ambush of bored Bengal tigers was
Rape!
upon him, and he quickly became
Rape!
their new plaything. After the body was found, a zoo spokesperson said the tigers had been fed the previous afternoon. Otherwise, there would have been nothing left. Number 14. A head for chemistry. In the age of pipe blockages and fatbergs, we should know by now not to mess with the sewers. In 2008, a biology teacher from Sofia, Bulgaria was driving home with 2 friends. Bystanders saw her car come to a sudden stop, and all 3 passengers got out and started pouring leftover jars of chemicals down a manhole. These noxious chemicals included diethyl ether and methanol, both highly flammable liquids. The cocktail of chemicals in the enclosed space of the sewers caused an explosion so powerful that the manhole cover was launched into the air, instantly decapitating the polluting teacher. The moral of the story? Don't mess with chemicals, or you could lose your head. Number 13. Flaming rodeo.
Living
If
the Captain
this
Planet,
isn't an example
kids.
of you should have known better, I don't know what is. In Washington in 2010, during the American Sprint Car Series, 2 crew members dreamed up an insane thrill ride. They poured 4 gallons of methanol into a 55-gallon barrel, sat on the barrel, then lit
Yep,
the bomb.
that's a good
off.
idea.
These 2 bright sparks thought the barrel would shoot across the parking lot like a rocket, and
And even if it did, it would still fuck them up.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Like, what was the plan here?
some kind of fiery rodeo. What they'd actually created was a makeshift bomb, which quickly blew them
Nigger.
sky high.
Yep.
Both men ended up in the hospital, and one of them died.
Oh, one
Not sure I
survived.
want to think about the aftermath between their legs.
Oh my
Number
God.
12.
survived.
Suddenly
Yep.
sluggish.
Penis
Most
probably
people
gone.
wouldn't have the guts to eat a slug. Turns out this guy didn't either. A young rugby player called Sam from Sydney, Australia was at a party in 2010 when the slug sped across the table. His friends dared him to eat it, and he did.
Motherfucker, what?
Not long afterwards, Sam contracted a rat lungworm, a parasitic worm spread by rodents. The parasite infested Sam's brain, putting him in a coma and leaving him paralyzed. Several years later, he died as a result of this prank gone wrong. I'm not sure I even have to tell you this, folks, but seriously, don't eat slugs. Number 11. Headless chickens. In 1997, a group of co-workers in Holland were on a tour bus,
Nigga.
and some of the bolder employees stuck their heads out of the window to enjoy the air. You'd think you'd notice a tunnel approaching down the road, but 2 men kept their heads out as the bus entered a viaduct, and by this point, it was too late. The 2 men were not decapitated, but suffered severe head trauma and snapped necks, killing them both instantly. Way to ruin the field trip, guys. Number 10. Fatal footsie. We've all heard stories of idiots playing Russian roulette, but this one tops them all. In 1999, Cambodia was littered with all kinds of discarded weaponry after decades of armed conflict. In a place called STEWIE, 3 friends had spent the evening drinking. After hours of arguing, one of the men pulled out a 25-year-old unexploded anti-tank mine he'd found in his backyard. The man then tossed it under the table, and the 3 men began taking turns to first drink, then stomp on the mine. Other villagers fled in terror, and minutes later, an enormous explosion occurred, killing all 3 men.
Yep,
Personally,
that's what
I
happens.
think the gene pool might have benefited from this one, don't you?
Delicious.
Number 9. Domestic disturbance.
Nigga.
Arguing with your partner can
I ain't
be
doing
an
that.
emotional roller coaster. But this man's reaction was shocking. In Buenos Aires, Argentina in 1998, a man decided that the best way to win an argument with his wife was to pick her up and throw her off the balcony. They were 8 floors up, but bizarrely, the woman became entangled in the power lines below. In what may have been an effort to save her, or maybe finish her off, the man leapt from the balcony aiming for the wires. The Airbnb abuser missed the wires completely, plunging to his death. Somehow, his wife managed to swing to a nearby balcony and was subsequently rescued. I'm no Buddhist, but that's karma.
Yo!
That is karma to the max.
That is karma to the max for real, yo.
Whoa!
That is wild, dude. No! This nigga tried to people's elbow this bitch out. No! We got a bitch now!
This nigga thought he was Tarzan.
He tried to fatality this hoe.
Number 8. Gaso-clean. Keeping box fresh trainers clean is a must, but this method might be going too far. In 1998, 67-year-old Texan Reva Nix was washing her tennis shoes. Wait for it, with gasoline. When the shoes, which she was still wearing, were ignited by a nearby candle. Reva had to run with flaming feet to her neighbor's house, who quickly doused her feet with a hose. It was too late, however, and Reva later died from her burns. The local sheriff warned others against using gasoline in this way, since it was apparently common practice. I guess that's Texas for you. Number 7.
Bitch died by hot feet. Texas toast.
Texas
That's what her
toast.
feet was.
Texas toast.
Nigga, Texas toes, baby. Yup. Hey, she just nigga.
Consider it car thief. Some people have pretty
Yeah,
twisted moral codes, but
Set
this
himself on
car thief
fire.
from Pittsburgh had a bit
It's
of
her
logic
fault.
to his larceny. Randy
set
Nestor
myself
stole
fire, y'all
plenty
mad
of
too.
cars, and whenever a
Yeah.
stolen vehicle became hot, he'd torch it, reasoning that the fire damage would help the owners collect on the insurance. Pretty thoughtful, right? It turns out Randy was the victim of his own virtue when he set fire to a van that he was still inside. On trying to escape, Randy found that the driver's side handle was broken and the door locked. Randy burned up inside the van and was pretty much killed by his own kindness and stupidity. Number 6.
Had him coming up fresh out this bitch. Burger Kinged his ass to death. Slow roasted like a rotisserie chicken. And I only say that because I'm hungry as shit
Making
right
me
now.
hungry, bro.
Would you rather fall off a cruise ship into the ocean and be stranded for 6 hours, or spend the night stuck in a room with a vicious and rabid cat? Tell us which would be worse in the comments below and hit that subscribe button while you're at it. Number 6. Methadone underwear. In August 2014, an inmate at a Kentucky jail died after eating methadone-soaked underwear that was smuggled into the prison by a cellmate.
See, that just goes to proof that eating anus is not good for your health.
55-year-old Michael Jones was let out on a release day from Jessamine County Jail to attend a funeral, but he had some friends inside and decided to bring the inmates a little treat. Allegedly, he brought back drug-laced underpants, which went undetected by prison guards as he was wearing them. Jones cut up the briefs and shared them with his cellmates, including 33-year-old Corey McQuarrie. McQuarrie started to feel sick and complained to the guards, but declined to tell them what he had eaten. The next morning, he was found lying unresponsive in his cell. He was taken to the hospital, but was pronounced dead later that day. During an investigation into his death, jail officials learned that he had consumed pieces of underwear that had been doused with liquid methadone. Police suspect he died of a drug overdose. Number 5. Shopping cart crash. In 2008, a Florida teenager named Cameron Bieberly participated in something called a car surfing. Car surfing typically involves standing on the back of a moving vehicle or being pulled by a car. Cameron thought it would be a fun idea to take a joyride in a shopping cart that was attached to the back of his friend's car. The 18-year-old's fun was cut short, though, when the car hit a speed bump at 42 miles an hour, or just about 68 kilometers an hour, hurling him 27 feet or just about 8 meters throughout the air. Cameron landed headfirst onto the concrete and died almost instantly. His friend who was driving the car, 26-year-old Adam Smith, was charged with vehicular homicide and received a 4-year prison sentence. Cameron's entirely avoidable death left his family heartbroken. The teen's father said that the tragedy had destroyed their lives. The family blamed the popular show Jackass for inspiring his son to try the stunt. But many will argue that, at the end of the day, Cameron was an adult who knowingly made a dangerous decision. Number 4, Hurricane Party. On August 17, 1969, Hurricane Camille roared towards the Mississippi coast with sustained winds of an incredible 190 miles per hour, or just over 300 kilometers per hour. It swept over Bay St. Louis, Mississippi as a Category 5 storm. Residents all along the coast fled the wrath of the mighty Hurricane Camille, but one group chose to ride the storm out rather than evacuate. 24 residents of the infamous Richelieu Manor apartments in Pass Christian chose not to flee and instead held a hurricane party. Common sense isn't that common. The apartment where the party was held was located in the direct path of the hurricane's eye wall. The storm completely destroyed the building, leaving nothing but a concrete slab. 23 of the 24 party attendees were killed. Camille is one of the strongest named hurricanes to ever hit the United States. More than 250 people died, and the cost of damages was over $1.4 billion.
How stupid do you have to... A hurricane party? I know cars are flying above us along with trees and human people, but no, we gonna play this Playboy card. You turn up, like, come on, bruh.
Number 3, eating slugs. In November 2018 in Sydney, Australia, 19-year-old Sam Ballard was drinking with his friends when they dared him to eat a slug that was crawling across his patio. It was just a silly dare. What's the worst that can happen? Sam reached for the slimy creature and gulped it down. How would he know that the slug carried a potentially deadly worm? Well, it did, and it put him into a coma that lasted more than a year, paralyzing his body and ultimately taking his life. After downing the slug, Sam became weak and started to complain of severe pain in his legs. Katie Ballard, Sam's mother, told news outlets that at first they had worried he might have multiple sclerosis, which had afflicted her husband, but doctors said that wasn't the case. Sam then told his mother and medical professionals he had eaten a slug, and that's when doctors were able to confirm rat lungworm disease from the infected little invertebrate. Rat lungworm disease is caused by a parasitic worm, and as the name suggests, the parasite lodges in the lungs of rats and is later excreted in its feces. So the slug Sam swallowed had eaten rat dung, or the parasite, and became infected, which infected Sam. And instead of passing through his digestive tract, the worm crawled into his brain. This caused Sam to fall into a coma for 420 days. When he woke up, he was paralyzed and unable to move without intense effort or eat without a tube. It wasn't long after he woke up that he died. Number 2, too much caffeine. In January of 2022, Tom Mansfield from the UK made a grave mistake measuring his caffeine powder. He died of a caffeine overdose when he mixed himself a drink that accidentally contained the caffeine equivalent to hundreds of cups of coffee. The 29-year-old worked as a personal trainer, and one day he ordered himself a 100-gram bag of a new caffeine powder. Tom often used caffeine powder to supplement his drinks, but when he measured the powder on a scale, he didn't get his math right. The recommended dose was roughly 600 milligrams, but he accidentally used several grams instead. This resulted in him mixing a drink with the power of 200 cups of coffee jammed into one. Immediately after he drank his toxic coffee mix, he clutched his chest in pain and started foaming at the mouth. His wife was shocked and terrified, but managed to call an ambulance. Tom went immediately into cardiac arrest and died before doctors could do anything to save him. Reaching a conclusion of misadventure, the coroner said that the cause of death was caffeine toxicity. Number 1, Smith machine. In May 2022, a 23-year-old paramedic named Dolores Dolo Boshert was tragically killed when gym equipment fell on her as she was exercising at a Club Fitness 25 miles or just about 40 kilometers northwest of St. Louis. Police said the freak accident happened around 2:50 a.m. No one else was in the gym at the time. It wasn't until 20 minutes after the incident that another gym goer showed up and discovered Dolo dead underneath the equipment.
Sexy.
They immediately attempted to render aid and called 911. Police said Dolo was squatting on a Smith machine when they believe she lost her balance.
Swear to God, homie said she was squatting on a Smith machine. What type of nasty shit is going on here?
And her legs suddenly gave out, and she was pinned under the heavy barbell. The Smith machine is a weight machine that consists of a barbell that is fixed within steel rails, allowing only vertical movement. It's most commonly used to perform squats. There were no signs of foul play, and investigators labeled it as, quote, an unfortunate accident.
Hey, look, let's keep it real. I don't know too many men that wouldn't be a sniff machine for that. I'm not sniffing shit. BlastphamousHD ain't never been sniffing shit.
Number 10. Beach umbrella. Most people go to the beach to relax and get away from the stresses of life. While it's pretty common for swimmers and surfers to drown or be attacked by sea life, you'd think sticking to the shore and sand would be safe, right? Well, not exactly. There's dangers around every corner. In August 2022, 63-year-old Tammy Perrault was killed on a South Carolina beach. The incident happened while she was out enjoying the day with some friends and Mike, her husband. It didn't seem to be too windy, maybe a little breezy according to Mike. But somehow, Tammy was struck by a runaway beach umbrella. It impaled her straight in the chest after a sudden gust of wind picked it up. Witnesses say she was sitting in the wrong place at the wrong time. The umbrella went directly through Tammy's arm and pierced her ribcage. She was taken to the emergency room right after the incident, but after just 1 hour, Tammy was gone. Mike and Tammy were married for over 27 years and had recently been enjoying their retirement. Her loved ones say that she was passionately in love even after all that time together. It's truly a sad situation. Number 9. Deadly exchange. In August 2022, a woman named Rachel Dollard was arrested not long after visiting her incarcerated romantic partner, Joshua Brown. He was being held in Tennessee's Kearney Center Industrial Complex for 11 years over drug charges. Even though Joshua already had his time in court and received his sentence, it seems he didn't learn his lesson. During the lovers' short visit, they shared a passionate kiss. At least, that's what it looked like to everyone else in the room. In reality, Rachel was transferring about half an ounce of meth inside her mouth. The kiss was just a ploy to pass it to Joshua. The drugs were contained inside a balloon pellet, and Josh swallowed the capsule in hopes of retrieving it later on from one end or the other. This masterful plan didn't exactly go how they hoped, though. Shortly after the exchange, Joshua was rushed to the hospital. While there, he passed away due to a drug overdose. Since she was the one who brought the meth into the correctional center and gave it to her partner, Rachel was charged with murder. So, not only did Joshua lose his life over this stupid plot, his lover's life was also ruined forever. Moral of the story is, don't do drugs, kids, and also, don't be stupid. Number 8. Sledding on a mattress. In 2008, 46-year-old David Monk and a few of his friends went to the Sal's Duel Resort in the Italian Alps to enjoy some time in the snow. They wanted to go sledding and picked out one of the biggest mountains. The 46-year-old British man thought it would be a good idea to use a foam crash barrier used as protection on a ski lift support as a makeshift sled. They basically used a mattress. The mattress quickly gained speed, and the men weren't able to control it. Sadly, they plowed into a safety net on their ride. David hit his head on a corner post and suffered severe damage, killing him almost instantly. 2 of his friends were critically injured. Police found David and his group while out on a motor ski patrol. Paramedics attempted to resuscitate David, but were unable to bring him back. They determined that the men had likely spent the previous night out drinking, which explains why they thought sledding down a mountain on a piece of foam was a good idea. David left behind his wife Anne as well as 2 teenage sons. In an interview, Anne spoke about her deceased partner saying, He was a loving husband and father. He was such a kind man who loved his family very much. It seems that David's friends will make a recovery, but it's unlikely the man's loved ones will ever get over this loss. What's the craziest thing you've done in the snow? Tell us in the comments, and hit subscribe while you're at it. Number 7. Timber. Coconuts can be difficult to collect at times. They grow high up in trees and many people collect them by hand. Some even chop down the whole tree just to get the coveted fruit, which is exactly what happened on January 9th, 2022. In the Shambur village in India, a 37-year-old man whose name has been listed as Yatiraj was cutting down trees at a coconut farm. He accepted a contract from a local farmer, but unfortunately for him, this job ended in tragedy. While chopping down the trees, Yatiraj was accidentally struck by a falling trunk. The accident caused severe injuries all over the man's body. As soon as someone noticed what had happened, he was rushed to the nearest government hospital. But by the time he reached the facility in Bantwal, he was already long gone. The accident came only 4 months after Yatiraj was married. We're not sure if we'll ever be able to look at a coconut the same way after this.
Nigga OD'd on a
Number
coconut?
6. Leap of faith. In order to go bungee jumping, you have to be a pretty brave individual. The simple yet terrifying act of stepping off a ledge and plunging down who knows how far leaves many people sick to their stomachs.
Oh, hell yeah.
To bungee jump safely, there's a lot of work involved. Trained professionals have to make sure proper safety checks are met. Equipment, usually reinforced cords held up by a crane, is in good shape, and that there's no obstacles in the jumping path. Unfortunately, in 1997, a 22-year-old man thought he could go bungee jumping all by himself with simple bungee cords. Eric A. Barsha, who made a living working in the fast food industry, tied a few of the stretchy cords together to make a fairly long rope of sorts. He then took one of the ends and wrapped it around his foot, while leaving the other anchored at the top of his jump site, a railroad trestle at Lake Akatink Park. The drop below him was about 70 feet. As you've probably gathered since he's on this list, Eric wasn't all too bright. He didn't have the proper gear to attempt this massive leap of faith, but he leaped anyway. Seconds after the jump, he hit the pavement. His body was discovered at about 2 in the morning. Investigators determined that Eric's makeshift bungee rope was longer than the distance from the ground to the railroad trestle. Incredibly, the cords didn't come loose and were still intact by the time Eric was found. It's possible that he could have survived the leap if he had taken better measurements. He probably still would have gotten hurt, but he might have made it out alive at least. Eric's family was shocked after hearing what he tried to do. His mom claimed that the young man was smart, so it was very surprising that he'd try something so stupid. Number 5.
That's dumb.
Pig dinner. In March 2015, 46-year-old Alexandru Pope was killed by a group of pigs. The farmer had gone to take care of the animals. His nephew, Andrei Alexandru, said that he was going to quickly feed them and come back. But 2 hours passed, and there was still no sign of Alexandru. This caused his family members to worry, so they went out to check on him. What they discovered left them horrified. The man had fallen into the pig pen, and the animals had started to eat him. His relatives found Alexandru with a half-eaten face. They believed that he probably had a heart attack while getting the pig's food and accidentally fell into the enclosure. The man did have a history of heart problems. An autopsy did not support this claim, though. It said that Alexandru passed away thanks to severe hemorrhaging, so it's likely he just slipped and fell. After this gruesome incident, the victim's family, who are from Romania, decided that the pigs involved should all be put down. It wouldn't be right to sell them to somebody else after what happened. Their bodies were all burned and not used for consumption. Number 4. Man vs. Cobra. Being afraid of snakes is reasonable. They're slippery, fast, and many of them carry lethal poison in their tiny fangs. Most people have enough common sense to stay away from the reptiles. But as you know, not everyone is gifted with intelligence on this planet. Sadly, 28-year-old Wayne Roth came face-to-face with a snake in 1998 and did not come out victorious. After ingesting drugs and consuming copious amounts of alcohol, the Pennsylvania man was hanging out at a friend's house. This friend, Crotu, happened to own a 6-foot-long giant cobra. It's unclear why he had such a dangerous animal, but it seems that the snake was his pet. While under the influence of several vices, Wayne decided it'd be a good idea to try and pick up the cobra. This didn't end well. The snake quickly snapped back and bit him. The combination of the venom and drugs in Wayne's system proved deadly. Strangely enough, after the initial bite, Wayne told his friend that he was fine and didn't need help. Instead, he suggested they go to the bar and get another drink. A few hours later, the side effects of the bite were growing obvious, so Crow 2 tried taking Wayne to the hospital. On the way there, he passed away. Number 3. Caked in dirt. An Iranian man who has been referred to simply as Omu Haji, which means elderly person, passed away in October 2022 after washing himself. The 94-year-old had reportedly not taken a bath or used soap to clean himself in over 60 years.
What?
People who knew him from his village told news outlets that a traumatic experience while he was younger resulted in this strange aversion to cleanliness. For decades, Omu lived caked in dirt. He'd often smoke animal feces in a pipe and ate roadkill from the street. He truly believed that being clean would make him sick. Another man from India named Kailash Singh believed something similar. Instead of taking a shower like most people, Kailash would instead take what he referred to as a fire bath. This involved lighting a fire, smoking marijuana, and praying. He said that the smoke and fire killed all the germs and bacteria off his body. Omu may have been right considering his quick passing right after bathing again. It's incredible that he lived so long that way. Maybe he was onto something. What do you think?
What?
Number 2. Michael Warner. In 2004, 58-year-old Michael Warner died after a sherry enema. Enemas typically involve a liquid or gas being inserted through the rectum and being absorbed into the body. Some people enjoy them, but it's not exactly everybody's cup of tea. Michael's wife, Tammy, was apparently the one who helped him do the enema. She claimed that her husband had a severe alcohol problem and would frequently do enemas with the substance. On the fatal night, Tammy helped Michael and gave him 2 large bottles of alcohol through the butt. The things we do for the people we love.
Hell no.
Sadly, this much sherry raised Michael's blood alcohol level up to 0.47, which is about 6 times over the legal limit. This outrageous amount resulted in the man's passing. After her husband's death, Tammy was accused of negligent homicide. Apparently, 1 month before the incident, she burnt Michael's will. In court, she denied all accusations and said that she was just trying to help her partner. The charges were later dropped due to a lack of evidence. Number 1. Too many carrots. There's a popular saying that too much of a good thing is bad. This applies to practically everything: relationships, money, work, and the classic carrots. Yup, we said carrots. As kids, people are told to eat the orange veggies to improve eye function and generally stay healthy. Carrots contain lots of good vitamins and nutrients, but when eaten in abundance, they can have negative consequences on your health. In 1974, a British scientist named Basil Brown learned this lesson the hard way. At just 48 years old, Basil prided himself on being a healthy food enthusiast. He was extremely conscious about what was put inside his body, but after his death, an autopsy revealed that he was anything but the picture of health. The man had severe liver cirrhosis, and his skin shined a bright yellow color. If you're unfamiliar, cirrhosis of the liver is caused by many things. Some of the most common include cystic fibrosis and alcoholism, but in unique cases, it can be a result of too much vitamin A. And guess what contains a large amount of vitamin A? That's right, carrots. Medical professionals believe that Basil's strange complexion was likely due to eating too much beta-carotene. This condition is called carotenemia. It's pretty incredible when you think about just how many carrots Basil had to have been eating each day in order to develop such a severe reaction. You shouldn't be afraid of eating these veggies yourself just because of what happened to him, but be sure not to overindulge.
Dumbest ways to die. Number 10. Using your phone while in the bathtub.
What?
Yes, people actually use electrical appliances while in the bath. In old movies, you'd often see a scene in which someone throws a radio into the bathtub to murder someone else, with such a typical scene being a warning to people to keep electrical appliances far away from the tub. Fast forward to the digital age and people have died while using Twitter in the bath. That happened in Romania a few years ago. The media called it Twittercide. Another person died quite recently in the US while using a cell phone in the bathtub while it was charging. It's too recent to go into details, but what we will tell you right now is this: do not use your phone while you are in the bathtub. Okay, if it's not plugged in, it won't cause you any harm if you drop it into the water, but it's not a good habit to get into. Number 9. Eating laundry detergent.
What?
You've all heard of the Tide Pod Challenge, wherein teens eat one of the small pods and video themselves doing it. Now, this shouldn't lead to death, but you might be surprised. In 2018, just over a matter of weeks, the American Association of Poison Control Centers reported that 86 people called poison control after eating a Tide Pod. We cannot stress enough how dangerous this is to the health of individuals, said one report in an interview with Vice. It can lead to seizure, pulmonary edema, respiratory arrest, coma, and even death. The UK Telegraph also reported in 2018 that 8 deaths occurred in the US from 2012 to 2017 as a result of eating detergent pods. These deaths were mainly young kids and older people suffering from mental problems, but it shows you that this can seriously be a dumb way to die.
Yeah, that's a dumb way to die.
Perhaps the question we should be asking is, why do they make them look so damn delicious? Number 8, death by Lego.
Don't look delicious.
So you know that standing on a piece of Lego can be excruciatingly painful. Science tells us it's up there with some of the world's worst pains. But you could do worse. You could choke on a piece of Lego. And yes, there are cases. Now, this usually happens to young kids, so we can't really blame them as they are too young to understand the danger. But then you've got deaths by pen caps, and these people who should know better have choked after thinking it was a good idea to have a nibble on it. If you do find yourself choking on something you shouldn't have put in your mouth, first try coughing hard, or you can push your thumb in the space below your ribs, or even try leaning over a chair, table, or railing, performing a kind of Heimlich maneuver on yourself. Number 7, holding in poop. Who hasn't just held on for that little bit longer so they didn't have to stop doing something and go to the bathroom? All of us. And sometimes you might not have a choice, such as when you are on a bus or sitting in a park on a summer's day with the girl or boy of your dreams.
God, the poop
but
is
holding
coming
it
out.
in can be deadly, as a 16-year-old girl found out in 2013 in the UK. We don't want to worry you too much though, as you'd have to hold it in for a very long time. One doctor, when interviewed, said, "It's not uncommon to see young people in their teens or 20s come in and say they haven't gone to the bathroom in 2 weeks."
What?
Okay, so death is unlikely, but just go to the toilet or get some help if you can't poop.
2 weeks?
Number 6, pets that can kill you. Not too long ago, a British man was found dead in his room, and the culprit was his 8-foot-long python pet that he dearly loved. Apparently, they got along very well, but animals can always be unpredictable, so if one is having a bad day and it's powerful enough to kill you, well, maybe you should just get a hamster.
Yeah.
We can find instances of pet lizards killing their owners, or death by pet tiger, pet bear, pet spider, and pet rat. Even dogs that have a predilection for violence and are big and strong enough have mauled their owners to death. A Shih Tzu might not ward off burglars or impress your tough buddies, but at least it won't eat you for dinner after a bad day. Number 5, the amateur parkour. People who practice the discipline of parkour usually have just that, discipline. While it's always dangerous to some extent, the professionals are well trained. But it seems some people try it anyway, even without much training, or worse, when drunk. Yes, there are quite a few deaths of amateur parkour cases out there. It's mostly young folks trying to get hits on social media or YouTube, when the only meaningful hit they get is one to the head. We are not all created to be famous, so don't try and copy something highly skilled parkour professionals do. In short, don't be a jackass. Number 4, squashed by a vending machine. Okay, so we've all been bugged at some point when what we paid for at the vending machine didn't come out.
I hate that.
What to do?
I hate that.
Tip the thing, of course.
Even worse, when you use one of them claw machines like in Toy Story at an arcade, and you get the toy like it's right in the claw, and it come up and it go around the toy like it's not even strong enough to pull it. Bro, I hate that. I saw a guy fight one of those vending machines and lose. Broke his whole hand.
Perhaps some of you burgeoning criminals have in the past thought it was a good idea to just tip it to see if you can get a freebie. Well, a study cited by The Guardian shows that this tipping of the vending machine has been for some people, mainly males aged 15 to 25, the last thing they ever did. This dance of death has led to the fatalities of more people than you would believe. Number 3, death by baguette or sausage. You might remember from one of our other shows that hot dogs kill quite a lot of people, urging one official to say they should come with a warning on them. In 2014, 77 people choked to death on hot dogs. But baguettes? Surely you couldn't choke on something that big. Well, we'll leave you with this opening sentence of an article that appeared in the British media a few years ago. An inquest heard how a Middlesbrough man choked and died after stuffing bread and pâté into his mouth. Number 2, laughing yourself to death. Yes, this actually happens, and there are notable cases throughout history. One of the more recent cases involved a man from the UK who laughed himself to death in 1975 after watching Kung Fu Capers, an episode of the TV series called The Goodies.
Should I watch that episode? Like, should I?
Apparently, it was so funny that he laughed for 25 minutes, after which he fell onto the sofa and died of heart failure. A similar thing happened to a Danish man in 1989, and the cause of his laughter was the movie A Fish Called Wanda.
What?
So, just be careful when you choose your comedies. Number 1, pretending to be a superhero.
Oh.
In 2017, a woman died after a 34-foot fall at the World Trade Center Oculus.
Oh!
According to news reports, she had been pretending to be a superhero. Unfortunately, she wasn't the first and probably won't be the last. In 2014, a kid died in Indonesia after he thought he had the powers of Spider-Man.
Yep.
Another boy in China died after he thought he had the powers of Superman.
Yep.
He was only 4, but should have known better. According to China Daily in 2011, the boy jumped from the 4th floor with his arms outstretched like Superman and was followed a few minutes later by his 4-year-old brother. The older brother survived the fall. Is this catching on? The USA has its real-life superhero in Phoenix Jones. In 2011, he had his nose broken and a gun put in his face while trying to protect some innocent bystanders. In 2015, the British press reported that some Scousers, another name for people from Liverpool, were posting videos on YouTube in which they were doing dangerous things while pretending to be Superman.
Ghost ride
Word
the
to
whip.
the wise, superheroes aren't real, and pretending to be them might get you killed.
13. The irony of dying while keeping fit. We'll give you just one famous example of a victim of irony, and that is the case of the former American jogging guru Jim Fixx. He wrote The Complete Book of Running in 1977, and it became a bestseller. In fact, he's said to be one of the main people that started what was called America's fitness revolution. Fixx had once been overweight and also a heavy smoker, but then he started his exercise regime, sold his books, and told the American people that running was the secret to having a long life and good health. He died of a heart attack while running when he was just 52 years old. Okay, so that's perhaps not so strange, and will get stranger, but we just wanted to give you an example of death by irony.
I mean, it could be
12.
worse.
Death by clothing.
Death by clothing.
You've all heard news media write stories about what it calls draconian laws or rules. This just usually means out-of-date laws or laws that seem way too strict or even brutal. We get this adjective from a Greek lawmaker called Draco. In Athens in the 7th century BC, this man created laws that were said to be unfair, or at least unfair if you were not part of the wealthy group of people. His harsh legal code could mean cruel punishments for even petty crimes. Nonetheless, it said he was popular at the time with the crowds. But in those days, the public did seem to enjoy watching blood being spilled. It said during one appearance in the Aeginetan Theater, the crowd wanted to show their adoration, so they threw their hats, cloaks, and shirts at him. But they went overboard, and it said Draco suffocated under the avalanche of clothing from his admirers.
What?
We should say that this is an old story passed down, so one might question how it actually happened. Maybe they meant to kill him, but we'll never know what happened that fateful day.
Close?
11. Death by proving that something is safe.
Oh.
You may have heard about this one, as it's popped up in various TV series from time to time. The story is of a Canadian lawyer called Gary Hoy. On July 9th, 1993, he was taking people on a tour of the Toronto Dominion Centre, a building of many floors with a lot of glass windows. He wanted to demonstrate to the people just how strong the windows were, as rightly some folks were concerned about such a high glass-fronted building. To do this, he did something he'd done before and threw himself at a glass window to show that the glass was very strong. He was right that the glass didn't smash, but on this occasion, the window popped out of its frame and Hoy fell a long way to his death. An engineer later told the Canadian media, "I don't know of any building code in the world that would allow a 160-pound man to run up against a glass and withstand it." That might have been some shock for the bystanders. 10. Same but different. This is another story of a lawyer trying to prove a point to people and in doing so, killed himself. The man was an American lawyer called Clement Vallandigham, and in 1871 he was representing a client that was accused of murder.
Yeah,
The
murder.
lawyer was trying to prove that the victim wasn't murdered but had accidentally killed himself. He tried to show how this might have happened and accidentally shot himself. He died, but his client got off the murder charge. 9.
Oh.
Death by beard. A tourism website in Austria tells us that people can visit the epitaph of a man called Hans Steininger. He was a mayor of Braunau in the 16th century and was well known for having a really long beard.
Braunau.
We're told it was so long that if not tied, it would trail on the floor. One day, the poor guy was walking down the street and he tripped on his own beard, broke his neck, and died. To this day, his beard is kept in the local museum. 8. Death
bitch.
by banana. Slipping on a
Banana?
banana skin is perhaps the
What's this, Mario Kart?
best known well-known gag joke, and of course it doesn't happen very often. But searching online, we can find one death certificate from 1927 that did indeed blame a banana skin for the death of a man. The 74-year-old slipped and died in Tennessee. 7. Death by piano. If people do actually die from slipping on banana skins, do they also die by a piano falling on their heads? Well, someone actually investigated this, and that writer found at least one incident when a piano being pulled up a building had come crashing down on a person below. The website Straight Dope writes, in 1931, a piano was being hoisted up to a second-story window when a cornice broke free from the building, falling and killing a mover below.
That's a Looney Tunes ass way to die, bruh. Looney Tunes ass way to die.
But perhaps the most famous piano death out there was that of a strip club bouncer called Jimmy Ferrozzo. In 1983, at a club in San Francisco, he and his girlfriend had been making love on a piano that was connected to a hoist so it could be lowered down for performances and raised when it wasn't being used. This time, the piano was down on the floor, but during the act of passion, one of the two accidentally hit the switch and the piano was pulled up. Jimmy was consequently crushed against the ceiling, but we are told his lover survived the incident. 6. Killed by a bird. We can actually find a few instances of people being killed by birds.
Stabbed to death by a bird. Birds have knives now? Birds are carrying weapons? What type of shit?
But this one has to be the strangest and also involves a fair bit of karma. In 2011, a 35-year-old California resident called Jose Luis Ochoa was stabbed to death by a bird. The BBC writes that the man had been at an illegal cockfight and had taken with him a cock that had sharp spurs on its legs, which were more like little knives. The bird apparently turned on its owner and he suffered what the coroner called a sharp force injury. A police spokesperson told the media, "I have never seen this type of an incident." No kidding. 5. Killing your son. The snake. In 2013, a Japanese man called Takuya Nagaya had apparently been acting a bit weird at his parents' apartment in Okazaki City. He'd been slithering around like a snake. Of course, his father came to the rational conclusion that his son had been possessed by some kind of snake demon. He then did the next rational thing and took matters into his own hands. Well, we should say head and teeth. Reports tell us his son died from injuries sustained while the father was trying to get the snake out of him by biting and headbutting him. You can only imagine what the scene must have looked like. 4. A cow through the roof. The BBC reported in 2013 that a Brazilian man was killed in his bed when a cow came crashing down through his roof. Somehow, the rather large animal got into his asbestos roof and fell right through it. Apparently, this wasn't the first time a cow had fallen through a roof in this rural area. The 45-year-old died from internal bleeding. 3. Death by slug. Many of us might have done some silly things just because we were dared to do it, or we wanted to win some money or just show off. This goes wrong all the time, and you can find endless video clips of Darwin Award types of stunts online. In November 2018, the world's media reported the death of an Australian man called Sam Ballard, who had died aged 28. 8 years prior to his death, the skilled rugby player had been at a party with friends in Sydney. No doubt quite a bit of alcohol had been consumed, and during the party, a slug turned up on the scene. Ballard's friends, writes The Independent, dared him to eat the slug. That he did, but as a result, he became very sick. He was taken to a hospital, and it was found later that he had been infected by a parasite known as rat lungworm. This ended up paralyzing the young man and was the reason he died some years later. 2. Death by cockroach. You shouldn't eat slugs, and you also probably shouldn't eat cockroaches. The BBC tells us that in 2012, a man from Florida by the name of Edward Archbold had entered himself into a live cockroach eating competition. He had done well, devouring dozens of the creatures, but it also killed him. The coroner ruled that his death was caused by asphyxia due to choking and aspiration of gastric contents. In short, he had choked on cockroach body parts. 1. The body of Christ. We know that some Christians will take into their mouths something that symbolizes the body of Christ, but one Canadian man took this a step further in 1987. According to the Toronto Globe and Mail, a man called Franco Brune had been taken in by police and left in the cells. It turns out that in the cell, the man had made use of a small Gideon's Bible by swallowing it. He choked to death on it. News reports tell us that for this mentally unwell man, the swallowing of the Bible to him was some form of symbolism or allegory, as though he was trying to purge himself of the devil by consuming religion.
Motherfucker.
Number 8. Don't get friendly with some wild animals. Some people in this world of ours have mistakenly thought that wild animals are not actually that wild, and so they've gotten up close to what we might call natural-born killers in the animal kingdom. Arguably the most famous case was that of a guy named Timothy Treadwell. If you haven't seen the movie about his exploits called Grizzly Man, we suggest you do at some point. Treadwell spent many of his summers in Alaska living among grizzly bears, animals that can rip a person's face off with one swipe. These animals are certainly fluffy and cute, but they are not the kinds of things we suggest you treat like a teddy bear. Treadwell was actually cautious with the bears, but he also got up close to them. Too close. After 13 summers with the bears, parts of his clothing were found inside the stomach of a 28-year-old grizzly. His girlfriend was also eaten. So yes, you have to be careful when you're around wild animals. It should be obvious, but it obviously isn't obvious to some people. There are a few recent cases of people being killed by wild animals. We don't mean to make fun of these people since their families are still grieving for them. But if we don't say anything, then we won't get the message across that you should not get up close to these certain beasts. In 2018, a man in India decided he wanted a selfie with a bear. It didn't end well, since the apex predator mauled him to death. Maybe you think that's unusual, but quite a few people have taken mortal selfies with wild animals. In fact, the BBC reported in 2018 that there had been a spate of deaths in India because people thought they could take selfies with elephants. Our advice is don't do it. It's not worth the likes on social media. In 2016 in China, a man thought it'd be a good idea to get up close to a walrus at a wildlife park and take a selfie. The walrus wasn't playing around though and pulled the man into the water and killed him. A zookeeper also died while trying to help the man. In 2015, officials at Yellowstone National Park had to issue a stark warning to all visitors. That was, please stop trying to take selfies with bison. Yep, there had been lots of cases of people doing this, and while no one died, some people suffered very serious injuries after being tossed around like a doll. It's like this, some folks hit flies away with their hands. They don't like flies. Well, some animals don't much like humans being around them. Some of them even want to eat you. Unfortunately, it gets worse than this, as you'll now see. Number 7. The gun just went off. If you search online for people who accidentally shot and killed themselves, you'll find that it happens quite often. Guns are not toys, and that's why they have safety mechanisms. There are too many cases of this happening to mention, and a lot of them happened in recent months and years in the USA. We found another case of a partygoer dying when messing with a gun. This happened in India in 2018. 3 guys were drinking when one man started showing off his pistol. The gun accidentally went off and the man died. It was reported in some Indian media that the guy was actually playing the game Russian roulette. He lost.
That's not.
If you don't know what that game is, it's putting one bullet in a chamber of a revolver, then spinning the chamber, and then you put the gun to your head and pull the trigger, hoping that the bullet isn't the one in the chamber. You'd think someone would have to be crazy to play that game. But if you look online, you'll find plenty of people who have died this way. Some cases are quite recent and happened in the USA. In Thailand in 2017, a man played this game with his wife. That was a very bad move because he ended up killing her. Be careful what you shoot at, too. In 1982, some guys in Arizona thought it'd be fun to shoot at a massive saguaro cacti. One of the men shot at a 26-foot-tall cactus, and a bit broke off. It landed on him and crushed him to death. The moral of the story is never, ever play with guns. Don't become a statistic. Don't end up being talked about on the infographic show. The next dumb way to die is arguably even a bigger killer around the world. Number 6. Death by mushroom. Mushrooms grow everywhere, and some of the edible ones sometimes look a bit like the poisonous ones. You wouldn't believe how many people just pick up some wild mushrooms, go home, eat them, and die. There are so many cases, and it seems most mushroom deaths happen in Asia, but not all. In 2019, one French woman died and 3 others were hospitalized after they had picked up some wild mushrooms they believed to be porcini mushrooms. They weren't. They were a mushroom known as a death cap, which doesn't sound like something you should eat.
Sounds like something out of a Super Mario video game on Super Nintendo.
The lesson here is you should never pick your own mushrooms unless you are a mushroom expert. There are lots of deadly mushrooms in this world of ours. These things have actually killed families and have injured or killed many people living in small communities. In 2014, 14 people in North Carolina became severely ill after eating mushrooms they had foraged. No one died, but they almost did. 3 of the people needed liver transplants. We found other cases in the 90s where people died in California after picking mushrooms they thought they could eat. The mushrooms again were the death caps. Death caps look like something you could eat, but they also look a bit like magic mushrooms, the hallucinogenic mushroom. Not too long ago, 4 men in the US became seriously ill after eating death caps. They thought they were going to get high and talk about the meaning of existence. Instead, they suffered severe liver damage. Okay, now to the realm of violent deaths again. This is not how you want to go. Number 5. Be careful where you swim. It's not really a dumb way to die if you just swim and something decides to eat you. But it's quite dumb if you've seen all the don't swim signs that tell you the water is full of massive crocodiles. It's happened in Australia in recent years, with one case involving a young man ignoring the signs and taking a dip. That swim ended up with the man being partly eaten by a croc. It's happened in the ocean, where massive saltwater crocodiles have taken people's lives, but it's also happened in rivers. There's a stretch of water in Australia called East Alligator River. Would you want to enter that river? Well, the authorities in recent years have been saying people know very well that they should not go in the water, but they do it as a kind of dare. Some parts of this river you can wade across, and there's a notorious crocodile hotspot called Cahill's Crossing. One guy tried to cross in 2017 and he didn't get very far. A croc took him and killed him. When he was taken, he was only standing in ankle-deep water. You should always do what those signs tell you. We're not even going to mention how many drownings there are when people swim in the ocean when signs say don't because of the conditions. Just do what you're told, that's our advice. The next one probably kills more people than anything on this list. Number 4. Treating cuts. We'll make this one short. Our advice is if you cut yourself and you have an open wound, then get it treated. Don't just ignore it because the cut might become infected. You know what? Scores of people don't treat their wounds and later they die from infection. In the 17th century, there was a famous case and involved a composer named Jean-Baptiste Lully. This guy loved dancing, and one particular dance he enjoyed involved banging a staff on the floor. One day he missed the floor and he hit his foot. This caused a pretty serious wound and it led to an infection. Lully was told at the time that this infection could kill him and his leg would have to be amputated. The man said, "No, if I lose that leg, I won't be able to dance anymore." He died soon after. Now for something we might call completely disgusting. Number 3. Overeating. Yup, some people just eat too much in one sitting and die. There's an old Monty Python movie that features a man in a restaurant that eats until he explodes. And while that won't happen, people can die from consuming massive meals. It happened in the 18th century to Adolf Fredrik, the King of Sweden, aka the man who ate himself to death. In one meal, he ate lots of his beloved lobster, dishes of caviar, some sauerkraut, some smoked herring, and he washed that all down with lots of champagne. After that, he had a whopping 14 servings of semla served with a bowl of hot milk. Semla is like cream bun. The meal was in fact not far from what the guy ordered in the Monty Python movie. The king didn't explode, but he couldn't digest that much food and he died. You can die of a reputed stomach, something you might have seen in the movie called Seven. The Lancet reported a case in the 1980s of a slim London-based model dying because she ate too much. That publication said she had consumed a half pound of steak, 1 pound of liver, 2 pounds of kidney, 2 eggs, 1 cauliflower, 10 peaches, 4 pears, 4 bananas, 2 apples, 2 glasses of milk, 2 slices of bread, and 2 pounds each of grapes, plums, and carrots. It was just too much and her stomach ruptured, which means to burst. Death by eating too much has happened at eating competitions too. A man in California recently died while taking part in a taco eating contest. The guy who watched the contest and saw this man eat said it was like he'd never eaten before. He was just shoving the tacos down his mouth without chewing. The guy collapsed during the contest. It's thought he choked to death. There are scores of stories of people dying after eating too much. Look online and you'll find them. One particular guy might have seen the movie Cool Hand Luke, because in that movie Luke eats 40 boiled eggs for a bet. This happened in India and it involved 2 men. One guy bet his friend that he couldn't eat 50 raw eggs in one sitting. The man got to 41 and died. Doctors said his death was simply caused by overeating. The next on this list is the most surprising and disturbing. Too much of a good thing can kill you, and that good thing could be a certain vitamin. Yes, consuming too many vitamins can be fatal. There's a famous case of a bunch of explorers that had a terrible time on an Australasian Antarctic expedition. 2 men died after falling into a crevasse, and 2 other guys got lost. They survived by eating the dogs they had with them. The men got back to the base camp, but they both fell very ill, and one of them died. First, he became terribly sick. His hair fell out, his skin peeled off. He became delirious, and then he died. Doctors now say those symptoms were in line with vitamin A overdose. The vitamins apparently came from the dogs' livers. Those guys didn't have many options, but some people choose to get too many vitamins down them. In 1974, a health advocate in London decided to consume 70 million units of vitamin A in around 10 gallons of carrot juice over a period of 10 days. His skin turned yellow and he died. When you consume too many vitamins, you can suffer from something called hypervitaminosis. This can be deadly, and you can find instances of when it happened. You might get kidney damage and survive, but you might also give up the ghost. It happened to a 10-year-old boy in India in 2016. He was prescribed vitamin D supplements, but it was just too much and he overdosed. We found more recent cases in the US when people died after consuming too much vitamin D. In some cases, it's the doctors who are dumb, not the consumers. But we don't want to scare you from getting your essential vitamins, just don't go crazy. And for this last one, you're gonna see that many young folk die every year from doing one stupid thing. Number 1, deadly deodorant. Okay, so we all want to smell good, but you should know that people have died from using too much deodorant. These are sad stories since the victims probably had an issue with how they smelled or what some people had said to them about their body odor, but they really shouldn't have gone crazy with the spray. In the 90s, a UK teenager died after spraying himself with deodorant all the time. It wasn't the fact that the stuff killed him by getting in his skin, but the fact that he sprayed it too often in a confined space. He died because over time he just inhaled too much spray. The autopsy showed 0.37 milligrams of butane per liter was in his blood. A level of 0.1 milligram per liter can kill you. It happened another time not that long ago in the UK. A young man was obsessed with his smell and he used deodorant all the time. In fact, an investigation found he had 45 cans of the stuff in his room. He inhaled too much and died. His mother later said he would not take showers but would stand there with deodorant and spray half of the can on him. You can actually find lots of deodorant deaths that happened in the UK and the US over the last few years. It's happened to both boys and girls. We won't mention them all because there are way too many. What we will say is that you should know this can happen. We don't mean to make fun of those people, we want you to know the dangers. That's why those sprays usually come with the warning, use in well-ventilated places. Let's be honest.
What's messed up is I actually know people who won't bathe, but also won't use the deodorant either.
Florida man down. Back in June 2022, over in Largo, Florida, a couple of people were enjoying a round of frisbee golf in a local park. What, you don't know the time-honored game of frisbee golf?
No.
As the name suggests, it's like golf, but instead of a ball, you have a frisbee, and instead of holes, you have these basket things. A more weirdly American sport has never existed, and I've been to a hot dog eating contest. Anyways, the game was progressing pretty normally when someone accidentally flung their frisbee off course into a nearby lake. Now, Florida is famously home to some 1.25 million alligators, and because of this, almost every body of fresh water across the state has signs warning people not to step foot in the water, lest they fancy becoming an alligator snack. Despite this, a gentleman who we'll call Florida Man decided in his infinite wisdom to wade right on in and grab the disc.
No.
Gators be damned. This was not his first time in the waters, though. He'd repeatedly waded into this lake in the past to fetch lost frisbees and resell them back to their owners, despite being warned not to do so multiple times. But this would be the last time he got to pull this ploy, because before he could find the frisbee, an alligator found him. Well, all I can say is if you play stupid games, like fetching frisbees from alligator-infested waters, you win stupid prizes. Like being eaten by alligators. Superior Idiot Energy. Back in August 2021, a gentleman from Southampton in the UK decided he wanted to try out paddleboarding for the first time. He'd carefully researched all the equipment he needed, bought a few boards and paddles for himself and his family, and then headed to a beach in Hampshire. He'd specifically chosen this beach because he knew the waters would be calmer, giving him a better chance to get to grips with the board. All seems like a very sensible, logical way to go about things, doesn't it? That is, until you learn that this guy couldn't swim. Also, he hadn't bothered to put on a life jacket. And then, to add the cherry on top of this idiot sundae, he'd paddled more than half a mile out into open water, where when he tried to turn the board around, he suddenly fell off. Unable to get a grip on the board, his inability to swim, and the lack of a body-affixed flotation device ended up causing his demise. To make matters worse, his wife claimed that the lack of Coast Guards on the beach was the main reason he didn't survive. While that may be a part of it, I'm pretty sure a fatal lack of common sense was more to blame here. Hot stuff. I love me a good barbecue.
Ooh, love
the only
barbecue.
part I don't enjoy is waiting for the coals to be hot enough to cook on.
Do not love
Yeah, I
coals. Do not
know.
love
It only
coals.
takes like 15 minutes to light them up and get them scorching hot, but
True
this
that.
little fatty wants his burger now.
I want it now. I hope he's
And
not
it
pointing
turns
at his-
out I'm not the only impatient one. Back in July 2022, a man from Erfstadt, Germany was driving along when all of a sudden he lost consciousness. His car came to a stop when it hit the side of a house and the local fire brigade was called. They assumed this guy had fallen asleep at the wheel and caused the accident, but when they got there, the unmistakable smell of charcoal filled their noses. And when they opened the back doors of the car, out fell several small barbecue grills with glowing coals still in them. After extinguishing the coals, the firefighters found beer, speakers, beer benches, and crockery inside.
This nigga was having a mobile barbecue / picnic kickback, and he was the only one invited? What?
It turned out the idiot driving was a cook who supposedly gave barbecue seminars. Apparently in a rush to get from one appointment to the next, he hadn't bothered to extinguish the still glowing coals in the kettle grills, which he loaded into the back of his car. Now, when they're burning, coals release a colorless and odorless toxic gas called carbon monoxide, even when they're not smoking. Which is why having a coal barbecue in an enclosed space is always a bad idea. After a while, this guy's car had filled up with the toxic gas, causing him to pass out and crash. Clearly, his barbecue course didn't cover the basics of barbecue safety. Pfft, amateur. Caffeine. In the big buff world of gym bros, taking a pre-workout supplement is currently all the rage. A single serving contains everything you need to boost your energy levels and get your buzz on, including vitamins, carbohydrates, and around 175 milligrams of the stimulant caffeine, about the same amount you'd find in 4 cups of coffee. Now that's liquid motivation. However, these supplements can be expensive, so some people resort to just buying caffeine powder and making their own liquid get-up-and-go juice. At least that's what one man in the UK tried to do back in 2022. He'd bought some caffeine powder to add to his homemade pre-workout drink, and because it hadn't come with a measuring cup or scoop, he decided to use some basic kitchen scales to measure out 300 milligrams of the stuff. That's about 6.5 very strong coffees. Definitely not advised, though not necessarily a fatal dose. But the scales he was using weren't in milligrams. They were in grams. The lowest weight he could measure on them was more than 6 times the maximum recommended dose. And it's believed, without realizing the metrics were wrong, he measured out close to 300 grams, more than 200 coffees worth of caffeine, and consumed it. Within minutes, he was on the floor in the grips of a severe caffeine overdose, one he didn't survive. Now, the caffeine levels in the blood of a person who drank 1 cup of coffee would be 2 to 4 milligrams per liter of blood. A post-mortem revealed that this guy's caffeine levels were 392 milligrams per liter. So this one goes out to all the gym lovers out there. Double, triple, quadruple check your supplement metrics. Or be like me and stick to having a pre-workout coffee on the couch, and then staying there. Much safer.
Much safer.
Poor life choo-choo choices.
No.
It's not just consuming self-made workout energy drinks that'll earn you a Darwin Award, though. Advertising them can result in an equally dumb demise, if this next entrant is anything to go by. Back in January 2015, a male fitness model in Burbank, California, decided he wanted to shoot a promotional video for an energy drink company he'd co-founded. But instead of shooting something like a big burly guy in a gym lifting weights with one hand and chugging his energy drink with another, our man wanted something different. He wanted to really train. No, sorry, I read that wrong. He wanted real trains. He planned to make it look like drinking this drink would give you the power to outrace a literal train. The only problem is that a shoot like this is expensive and requires a lot of paperwork. But going for a more brawn over brain approach, our man figured he and his team could just trespass onto a restricted area of the Metrolink tracks and shoot the commercial hassle-free. His plan was to run on a set of tracks that were parallel to the trains coming up behind him, so shot from the side it would only look like he was running ahead of the train. But here's the kicker. This particular section of railway was on a blind bend, so until the train was around the corner, there was no way of knowing which set of tracks it would be using. Nevertheless, our model man shouted action and started running, with the train quickly catching up behind him. Despite the blaring sound of the train's horn, our man just kept running in a straight line until the train ran over him. Would this be a bad time to mention that semi-realistic CGI effects are pretty cheap these days? Like, I know a guy who'll edit you into a train chase scene for like $20. No, sorry. I was too busy over here flexing my brain, not my muscles. Protein powder problems. What, another gym bro workout supplement related story? Don't mind if I do. Back in February 2022, early in the morning, a young man was driving along a road on the outskirts of San Diego. Without warning, he veered off to the side of the road, hitting a parked vehicle and causing a 6-car pileup.
Dang.
Okay, at this point, I want you to take a guess at why he veered off the road. Was he looking at his phone? Had he fallen asleep? Was he attempting to open a packet of protein powder, take out a scoop and pour it into a cup of water he had in his lap while mixing it with a knife? Well, if you guessed that last one, give yourself a cookie. When rescuers arrived at the scene, they opened the guy's door to find protein powder all over the vehicle. It coated the seats, the dash, the airbag that had deployed after he crashed, and the knife, which, as he'd been distractedly using it to mix the protein drink in his lap, had been propelled back by the airbag and into his body. Fatally. Luckily, no one else was injured. Okay, several takeaways from this story. 1. Don't mix your protein powder while you drive. 2. Don't hold a knife while you drive. And 3. Always take your workout supplements with a liberal dose of common sense. TikTok trouble. A lot of good things have come from the video sharing app TikTok, such as fun dances and wholesome viral stars. But it's also provided the catalyst for a lot of incredibly dumb trends, just for likes and views. Often, the more extreme these are, the more views they receive. But they can be so pointlessly dangerous, many of them have been banned from the platform. But back in November 2022, one wannabe TikTok creator went viral for all the wrong reasons. Deciding he needed to add a little edge to his next TikTok dance, a man from Texas, in all his infinite wisdom, decided to get up on top of an 18-wheeler and then began to record himself dancing while the truck was moving. The driver of the truck had no idea, and so he continued on his route as per usual. This included driving across Houston's US 59 East X freeway, a route with several overpasses. Other drivers soon noticed the TikTok terror, watching as he ducked down to avoid being hit by some of the overpasses. But he was too focused on his dance moves and didn't spot one coming up at speed. He was promptly knocked off the top of the truck and into moving traffic, which obviously he didn't survive. I want to say this was an accident, but part of me wonders if he started the video like, Darwin Award achievement check. Lord have mercy on this idiot. There are a lot of people out there who claim to be the reincarnation of the big JC, Jesus Christ, but none have ever definitively proved that they are, which is what one pastor from Zambia was about to change. Back in 2021, this guy promised to prove to his congregation that he was the reincarnation of the Son of God by recreating one of Jesus' famous heavenly abilities. You assume he'd choose something with minimal risk, like turning water into wine or walking on water. No, of course not. He demanded his congregation bury him alive and then dig him up 3 days later, mimicking JC's famous resurrection. So as instructed, the church members dug him a grave, tied his hands together, and buried him. He remained there, as the good book said, for 3 days. And when he was exhumed on the 3rd day, something unbelievable happened. He was alive. He'd done it. He'd really done it. He is risen! He obviously didn't do this. The pastor did not, in fact, survive 3 days buried in 6 feet of earth with no air. Not exactly a surprise. And was very much stuck in the pre-resurrection stage. His congregation members were arrested, with several still on the run for their hand in this prophetical failing. If only he'd stuck to not turning water into wine. Copter chaos. When it comes to big dangerous machines with the power to tear people to shreds, very few people immediately think of helicopters. Well, if at least one more of them had, then they might still be with us. Back in July 2022, news outlets all over the world began reporting on a story from Athens, Greece, where a tourist was struck down by a helicopter rotor after getting too close to the blades while trying to take a selfie with the vehicle. The news outlets quickly ran with the sensational story, but it turned out that they were wrong about one key thing, and the real story was far more baffling. The tourist in question had been riding as part of a group on the helicopter and after it landed had disembarked with the others and was chaperoned to a nearby lounge safely. However, it was at this point the tourist, who appeared to be calling someone on his phone, left the lounge and made a sudden beeline back to the helicopter, without telling anyone anything. As he approached the still running vehicle, ground staff suddenly clocked him, shouting for him to stop. But over the noise of the helicopter, he couldn't hear them, nor could he see how fast the rear rotor was spinning. The pilot, who was wearing headphones, only heard the ground crew shouting right as the tourist made the unthinkable decision to duck under the tail section of the aircraft, but misjudged how close he was to the whirring blades and was fatally caught by the tail rotor. So it wasn't down to a seriously stupid selfie. But what the heck possessed him to go back to the helicopter, let alone duck under the tail and get that close to the blades? Maybe he'd forgotten something on the helicopter. Maybe he wanted to see the helicopter from the other side? Maybe. I don't know. I'm out of ideas. What do you think he was doing? Let me know down in the comments below.
All bad.
Gee whiz. Manual labor is no easy profession. It's a lot of long hours where you're constantly on your feet, often at the mercy of the elements. It ain't for the faint-hearted or the smooth-brained, considering how many dangers you can find on an active site. Which is why this next guy's employment in the field shorted out, shall we say. Back in 2020 in Dehradun, India, a laborer for the Uttarakhand Power Corporation decided to take a leak. Because he was on the job, he figured he shouldn't go far, and so found a pole to relieve himself next to. But this guy must have forgotten where he was and that he was working for a power company, because he chose a pole that was right next to an electrical box. As soon as he let the stream rip onto the box, a fatal bolt of electricity surged up it and through his body, frying him instantly. Well, whether you work for a power company or not, I think we can all agree that we're going to be checking where we whiz before we whiz from now on.
Yeah.
Falling on hard times. When you're doing something as dangerous as canyoneering, the activity of exploring canyons, and California's aptly named Death Valley, having the right equipment isn't just advised, it's crucial. Otherwise, you might end up like this next guy. Back in December 2022, having planned a solo canyoneering trip, our man went by himself to rappel down one of Death Valley's many canyons when he suddenly realized his rope was too short. Instead of admitting defeat and heading out of the park to find somewhere that might sell him a longer rope, he had a big brain moment. He could use a piece of webbing to lengthen his rope and make it down to the bottom. Now, webbing is a sort of strap often used to secure things like backpacks. It's not designed to be used as climbing equipment. Nonetheless, he extended the makeshift rope and, happy with it, began his descent. However, when he reached the knot where the rope met the webbing, he had to briefly disconnect his rappel device in order to get over it. And it was here, while he wasn't secured to the wall or the rope thanks to his own harebrained design, that he suddenly fell 30 feet to his demise. At least now we all know how not to go canyoneering. Get it? Not? Like the knot he, Yeah, the dad jokes aren't going to get any better. They're the most stable part of my personality. Deal with it. Pour one out. Alcohol has a few properties that it's famous for. For one, it's a depressant, meaning it inhibits or depresses the response of the central nervous system, which is why you slur your speech and can't walk straight when you've had one too many. 2, at room temperature, it's liquid in form. And 3, it's highly flammable. Now that last one is particularly important because people don't seem to understand just how dangerous that makes it near an open flame if not handled correctly. For example, back in July 2022, a man from Naples, Italy was having a barbecue when he decided to add a little fuel to the fire. Did he use firelights? Maybe a little extra paper or wood? Nope, this guy decided to pour alcohol on the flames. Here's a little science lesson for you kids. When a high enough proof alcohol in a stream meets a flame, it doesn't magically make the source of the fire any hotter. It sets the stream of alcohol on fire. In an instant, fire had traveled up the stream of alcohol to the bottle it was being poured from, and the whole thing blew up in his face. The injuries...
I've had that happen to me. Yep, I was setting bugs on fire when I was a kid, and I poured this whole entire thing of alcohol into like this big old country crock cooking pan, put a whole bunch of paper and bugs in there, set it on fire, poured the alcohol onto the fire. The alcohol traveled up the bottle and blew up in my hand. Didn't blow me up though, luckily.
he sustained were so severe, he didn't survive. But luckily, I like my tales of fatal idiocy well done. The Jägermeister. Jägermeister is an herbal liqueur which, thanks to the 56 herbs and spices that go into making it, give it something of an acquired taste. And by that I mean, I only like it when it's mixed with a Red Bull. I'm just classy like that. Still, at 35% alcohol by volume, it's pretty potent regardless. Well, over in a liquor parlor in South Africa, they decided to put the drink's potency to the test. They set up a drinking competition offering a prize of 200 rand, a little over $11, to anyone who could drink an entire 24-ounce bottle of the stuff. It's unclear whether they thought anyone would actually be dumb enough to attempt the challenge or whether they assumed it just couldn't be done. But several men stood up to the plate. And not only did the winner down every last drop, he also did so in less than 2 minutes. He was awarded his 200 rand prize when all of a sudden he collapsed on the floor. But he wasn't just drunk or asleep, he was gone. Yeah, here's something I assumed I didn't need to explain. Alcohol isn't good for you in massive quantities. It's a toxin which can build up in the blood and literally poison you. In general, your body can process about 1 unit of alcohol per hour. After one drink, your blood will have an alcohol content of roughly 0.04%. After 6 drinks, that'd be around 0.14%. At this point, vomiting is not uncommon. After 15 drinks with a blood alcohol level of 0.3%, unconsciousness is inevitable. But after consuming an entire bottle of Jägermeister in just 2 minutes, our man's blood alcohol content would have shot up from 0% to around 0.44%. A fatal dose. Oh man, I can almost hear the frat boys saying he could have walked it off if only he'd had a couple of Red Bulls to chase it with. Honorable mentions. Okay, so there have been some pretty solid attempts to join the prestigious list of Darwin Award winners over the years, but the idiots in question have tragically survived. However, I'm feeling generous, so to make sure they don't feel left out, here are a couple of honorable mentions to those who almost made the list with some certifiably moronic life choices. To start, we head over to Russia, where back in 2020 an influencer decided to make their birthday a memorable one by inviting some of their friends over to a pool complex they'd hired out. They spent a little time in the sauna, and to ensure the water was extra cold for their post-sauna swim, the influencer had ordered 55 pounds of dry ice, which they then dumped into the pool. Okay, pop quiz. Do you guys know what dry ice actually is? No? Well, neither did the influencer.
Oh my god. Yeah, that's not good. That's all the way bad.
All they knew was that it was very cold, and when it met water, it produced a cool steam show effect, which would look great on their socials. But here's the thing. Dry ice is the solid form of carbon dioxide, which only stays solid at a temperature of negative 109.2 degrees Fahrenheit. Above this and without the right pressure conditions, it transitions straight into gas, without an immediate liquid stage. So dumping that much in a pool which was not a well-ventilated space released a lot of carbon dioxide, a gas humans famously cannot breathe. Several guests dived in and immediately began to choke. The influencer themselves and a few others managed to get out just in time, but 3 guests suffocated, including the influencer's own husband. Well, that's a birthday they'll certainly never forget. Although that's not the dumbest thing someone's done around a body of water. Back in July 2022, the chief minister of a North Indian state visited the holy Quagmire rivulet, marking 22 years of its cleansing. Despite its historical significance, the rivulet had once been a sewer drain. But more than 20 years of community rejuvenation brought the rivulet back to life. On the heels of a clean water campaign in the state, the chief minister was so keen to prove to everyone at this event that the Quagmire was both clean and safe, he grabbed himself a glass of its water and drank it down. I really hope I don't need to tell you, but just because fresh water looks clean doesn't mean it's safe to drink. Waterborne infections like E. coli, parasites, and raw sewage can contaminate even the freshest looking water sources, which this chief minister found out quickly. The next day, multiple media outlets reported that he was airlifted to a hospital with severe stomach cramps. He attempted to deny it, claiming it was a routine checkup, though I'm not sure how many people need an emergency airlift for a simple checkup. Something smells off, though that might just be the Quagmire. Ride or die.
Oh.
Now, I don't usually have favorites, but this next Darwin Award is just... it's just lacking so many brain cells, it's unbeatable, in my opinion. Back in 2015, a gentleman and his friend were visiting Cedar Point Amusement Park in Sandusky, Ohio. They decided to get their adrenaline fix on the Raptor, a steel inverted roller coaster which whips riders around at a top speed of 57 miles per hour. As they were riding, our man in question realized his phone had fallen out of his pocket. Once the ride was over, he peered over into the restricted section and saw his phone lying near the coaster's tracks. Completely ignoring the big "Do Not Enter" signs, the fences constructed to keep people out, and the fact he knew the ride was currently in operation, having literally just been on it, our man hopped the fence and reached for his phone. To literally no one's surprise, he didn't even bother to check if another cart was coming, and so, as you've probably guessed, he was struck by an oncoming cart. Yep, that's got to your Darwin Award if ever there was one. Do you ever wonder if humanity will reach a point where we all become collectively enlightened? Like, we'll all just stop doing obviously dumb stuff one day and live out each of our lives as happy and healthy individuals? Well, today is not that day. Nor is that day coming anytime soon, because we're on part 16 of this series. For anyone new here, we're looking at people who have removed themselves from the gene pool in ways that are so idiotic they prove that Darwin was right. So get your popcorn ready as we take a look at even more embarrassingly dumb ways people died.
Get your hot Cheetos ready, boys. Big bad
Big
boom.
bada boom.
Big bada boom.
Okay, before we dive into this first one, I just need to check real quick. Nope, I'm not going insane. So here's a quick question. If you found some old unstable explosives on a piece of land near your home, what would you do? A. Call the authorities and alert them to the situation.
Light it on fire.
B. Pick them up, cart them around, and attempt to bury them. I'll give you a few
I'm not
seconds to
gonna bury 'em.
contemplate.
What would I bury him for?
Are we done? Cool. So
not
the
gonna
answer
bury
is obviously A, right? No one in their right mind would try to handle them, let alone bury them, unless they knew what they were doing, right? Right? Okay, good. I'm not
Wrong!
being insane. Why did I ask? Oh, because back in 2004, a gentleman in Chiavenna, Italy, did just that. He discovered some old sticks of dynamite in an abandoned shack on some land near his vineyard. He'd had some experience of working with explosives before, so decided instead of calling the authorities, he could handle the situation himself. Unfortunately for him, this dynamite had been sitting around for a long time and was sweating nitroglycerin,
Ooh.
a highly unstable liquid component of this type of
Highly
explosive.
unstable
Unaware
liquid
of how
component.
volatile these explosives now
Very
were,
volatile.
our man set about attempting to bury them. He dug a 30-foot hole, carefully placed the dynamite in it, and then gently filled it in. However, when he tried to flatten the earth mound he'd created by patting it down, the compression triggered the dynamite. The explosion was so huge that it rocked the town of Chiavenna, and police rushed to investigate. They found our man torn to shreds, and he remained alive just long enough to tell them the story, before receiving his Darwin Award.
Oh!
Get rich quick.
Ooh, Nigerian
When your
princess.
doctor tells you to do something, whether it be to get more exercise, cut down on the coffee, or to stop throwing apples at them to try and keep them away, you should do it for the sake of your health. But if they start offering you financial advice, I'd seek a second opinion. Otherwise, you might end up like this next award winner. Back in 2014, our man arrived in Zambia from Malawi. Having very little money, he consulted a witch doctor asking him for advice on how to become rich. Now, most medically accredited doctors don't specialize in dispensing financial advice, but this one did. Was it to open a high-interest savings account? Maybe study hard and get a good job? Nope. He suggested our man sacrifice parts of his own body.
Oh!
That's not an option I've seen any big banks offering recently.
Don't
I wonder
sacrifice
why.
parts of your own
Well,
body.
putting his faith in the witch doctor, our award winner decided to travel out into the Zambian bush, get butt naked, and then let nature take its course.
Yep, so
And by
took
that
its
I mean
course.
wandering around for a few hours until a hungry hyena attacked him,
Yep.
biting off 3 of his toes along with his manhood.
Oh!
Somehow our man survived, though his ability to procreate has been lost to the belly of the hyena, earning him a Darwin Award nonetheless. Shame it doesn't have any monetary value, though.
Oh.
Got the hump.
Hey,
There's
never
a
have
special
sex
circle
with
of
a
hell for
camel.
people who hurt animals, in my opinion. But there's another circle for those who pick on the wrong animal and lose, where they're mocked for all eternity. And that's the internet. Back in February 2023, the Brioshka Recreation Center in Omsk, Siberia, had a surprise guest for a children's event being held there, a Bactrian camel. That's the kind with 2 humps. The camel, however, was not as excited to be there. Its handler tried to drag it towards the event through a patch of snow outside the center, but the camel was having none of it. Getting increasingly frustrated, the handler resorted to violence, repeatedly striking the animal in the head. Now, I don't know if any of you have ever seen an adult Bactrian camel, but these things are huge. They're 6 foot tall at the shoulder and weigh in around 1,000 pounds.
Oh!
And while they look pretty chill, they can become unstoppably aggressive. So picking a fight with one is not a smart move, as this guy quickly discovered. After landing the second blow, the camel suddenly responded by biting, mauling, trampling, and flinging the handler around like a ragdoll, as he was obviously no match for the massive beast. After the handler stopped moving, the camel went back to being a typical chill camel, as if nothing had happened. Needless to say, after being pummeled by a beast more than 7 times his size, the handler didn't make it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess the lesson here is treat your animals as you want to be treated.
Yep.
Especially animals much bigger than you that are prone to violence.
Yep. Very prone to violence, baby.
How not to prank 101.
Oh boy.
YouTube's extreme prank community hasn't had the best rep in recent years. From creeps ignoring the all-important rule of consent to cases of child cruelty, it's pretty hard to upload an extreme prank that's entertaining, doesn't cross the line, and isn't faked for views.
Yeah.
But the idea of staging an extreme prank isn't something that one YouTuber from Tennessee even considered back in 2021, which led to his super dumb demise.
Yep.
He and his friend decided to prank a group of people late one night by running at them in a parking lot, wielding a butcher knife and pretending to rob them.
Get shot,
with someone
bitch.
else nearby recording the incident. That doesn't sound like a prank. That sounds like attempted assault. Now here's the thing. The group they were targeting didn't know that this was a prank. I'm guessing, so their fear came across as authentic on camera.
Very
But
authentic.
Tennessee is quite famously
Shot
an
they
open
punk
carry
asses.
state, meaning citizens are allowed to carry firearms.
Blah,
Specifically
blah.
handguns on their
Chirp,
persons
chirp.
for self-defense purposes.
Everybody goes
which
down.
one of them was.
Yep.
So when the YouTuber brandished a big old knife at the group and declared his intent to rob them, the armed group member immediately took him out. Yeah, it's not clear how he thought this was going to end.
Stupid.
Maybe he just really wanted to be a part of my Darwin Award series.
Oh.
At least now his prank has made it big on YouTube.
He went viral after all. You stupid
Hello,
motherfucker.
darkness, my old friend.
Oh.
Darkness is crime's best friend, allowing
I bet.
people to commit unspeakable acts
Is that
without
Batman?
ever being seen, including by the idiots committing said crime, it turns out. Back in 2000, a couple of would-be criminals decided to target a gentleman who lived on a caravan park in Brisbane, Australia. It was late at night and very dark, so the pair thought they'd have the advantage. The guy would never see them coming. They each pull out a knife and storm the caravan, which was pitch black inside. A huge scuffle occurred between the 3 men, but when the would-be victim managed to turn the light on, he couldn't believe his eyes. He was uninjured, his 2 assailants, however, unable to see, had impaled each other. One only just survived, but the other never made it to the hospital. I guess that's the last time either of them will be taking a stab in the dark.
She said taking a stab in the dark.
Fast food fake. You know,
fake
considering
fast
how
food?
many of us indulge in fast food every day, the people flipping your burgers and making your pizzas really don't make enough money. But in a bid to make more cash, one pair of fast food managers ended up getting way more than they bargained for. This was back in the year 2000, when the night and day managers of a Burger King in Indianapolis came up with a plan to stage a robbery of the store they worked for. The day manager would steal $4,000 in cash from the day's takings before tying up the night manager in the walk-in freezer and setting a small fire in a wastebasket, making it look like the robbers had also tried to burn the place down. The fire alarm would go off, and when the fire brigade arrived, the night manager would tell them it was a robbery and no one would think the pair of them had taken the money.
How's
This
she gonna
might
survive
have
in
been a
the
plan
freezer?
that worked if the day manager hadn't messed up.
She gonna
They
freeze.
set the wastebasket on fire, but it was barely a smolder, which didn't set off any of the fire alarms. It wasn't until the morning crew came in and the rush of air from the open door sparked the smoldering embers to burst into flames that the firefighters were called. And only then did they find the manager in the freezer suffering from extreme hypothermia. As you can guess, she didn't make it to the hospital. But after realizing that the night manager's bindings were loose enough for her to have gotten free and that she could have escaped from the unlocked freezer, they began to suspect foul play.
What?
It wasn't long before they approached the day manager, who not only still had the cash on them, but had incriminatingly stashed it in a Burger King bag.
Motherfucker!
Man, if you're going to be dumb enough to try a plan like this, at least be smart enough not to get caught. Cycle blame. Okay, cyclists of the world, listen up. Most drivers hate us. That's no secret. We're much slower than them. Some of us take up way too much space on the road, and some even run red lights and ignore signs thinking they don't apply to us. If we want to improve our reputation, we need to do better. Starting with paying attention. Otherwise, you might end up like this next award winner. Back in 1997, a cyclist in Sorocaba, Brazil, put his Walkman headphones on and set off on his bicycle. He was happily listening to his tunes, making his way through the city when he decided to take a shortcut to his destination. Absorbed in his music, he pedaled on, blissfully unaware of his surroundings, when, all of a sudden, he was knocked off his bike by an oncoming plane. Yeah, the shortcut this guy had decided to take led across Sorocaba Airport's landing strip, and with his music blaring, he hadn't heard the twin-prop plane approaching the runway to land. He crossed its path at exactly the wrong time, and, needless to say, he didn't survive.
Oh
Well,
my
there's
God.
at least one important lesson for all cyclists here. Not everything is a cycle lane.
Oh.
Up in flames. Here's a question. What do you use gasoline for? I bet most of you just said, it's fuel, duh. But did you know, as a petroleum-based product, it's also pretty good at dissolving oils, making it a decent degreaser. The only obvious issue is that it's also highly flammable, which is why it's not advised to use it as your go-to degreaser. But that hasn't stopped some idiots. Back in 1998, a woman in Texas was cleaning the tennis shoes she was wearing with gasoline to give them that bright white finish. If she'd used an ounce of caution, this would have been absolutely fine. Except she was doing it right next to a candle she had recently lit, which she accidentally knocked over. All of a sudden, the flame ignited the spills of gasoline, leading to her shoes.
Fire challenge.
With her feet on fire, she panicked and ran to her neighbor's house, who rushed for a water hose. But as she did, the polyester dress the woman was wearing, a notoriously flammable material, also caught fire from the flame of the shoes. The neighbor eventually put her out, but not before our idiot joined the many Darwin Award winners before her. Braving the barricade. Road signs and barricades are the bane of any car owner. One minute you're driving along, the next you need to turn around because the road ahead is closed. Grr, it's infuriating. Now I, being a law-abiding citizen, just take the L and try to find a detour, like 99% of normal people. However, there's that 1% of drivers that think, surely whatever they've closed the road for doesn't apply to me, right? I'm special! Nothing bad will happen to me if I just keep on driving. Well, that's exactly what this next guy was thinking. Back in March 2018, New Jersey was in chaos. A recent storm had downed trees and power lines all over the place, so there was traffic snarling the roads and tailbacks everywhere you looked. Barricades were put up left, right, and center. However, one man who'd been asked by his father to come and shovel his driveway decided these barricades simply did not apply to him. He steered around a set of bright orange traffic cones that clearly blocked the road ahead of him and continued on his way.
Yep,
That
right
was
off the
until
cliff.
a downed electrical wire in the middle of the road, which was live and still buzzing with thousands of volts of electricity, struck the car, zapping the driver, and setting the entire thing on fire.
Oh my God.
Oh man, if only there'd been something to warn him of the danger ahead. I don't know, like a set of bright orange cones purposely blocking the road? Be smart.
Boobies.
You know what you should never fuck with? Bees. They sting, they swarm,
The only type of good bees are boobies. Just had to say that.
and they suck. Period. So if you do have to fuck with them, you better know what you're doing. or you could end up like this next award winner. Back in 2002, a farmer from Sao Paulo, Brazil was tasked with removing a beehive from one of his orange trees. He could have hired a professional to take care of it, but he figured the easiest and cheapest way to be rid of them would be to burn the hive himself.
No.
So he put on his gloves, long pants, and long-sleeved garments before sealing everything together with tape so that bees wouldn't crawl into his clothes.
No, you
Then he
gotta
put a
seal your
plastic
head.
bag on his head and sealed it tightly
Plastic
around
bag?
his neck so the bees wouldn't sting his face.
Mother!
And finally, he grabbed a torch and went off to burn some bees. A few hours later, though, he hadn't returned. Worried, his wife went out to look for him, and she found him, dead. But it wasn't from the bees. In fact, their hive was untouched. It turned out that the bag strapped to his head was efficient at keeping out the bees, the smoke, and the oxygen he needed to breathe. Yep, this idiot hadn't put any air holes in the bag, and with his gloves taped down, his fumbling fingers weren't able to get any purchase to rip the bag off. Well, I think we all know the moral of this story. Yeah, don't f*** with bees. Buzzkill. If you legally own a gun, there's a good chance you've gone down to a firing range to practice your aim, where you can shoot a bunch of sensible, non-life-threatening targets. You know, like paper targets, steel plates, balloons, live electrical utility poles. Wait, hang on. That last one isn't found on any shooting range I've ever been to. And with a very good reason, as one Pennsylvania man discovered back in 2002. He and a few of his friends were practicing their marksmanship in a farm field by shooting at, you guessed it, a live electrical utility pole.
Oh boy!
Specifically, they were aiming at the glass electrical insulators lining the poles and keeping the wire suspended. Now, the good news is their aim was sharp enough to hit at least 6 of these insulators. The bad news was that as they hit the last insulator holding the live electrical wire in place, it fell down. Suddenly, our man became aware that the sun-scorched farmland they were on could catch fire, and so panicked, he grabbed the wire with his hands.
Oh!
Big mistake. Thousands of volts of electricity surged through his body, instantly ending him and fast-tracking his application into the coveted Darwin Award Hall of Fame.
Oh.
Chivalry is dead.
Yep, and women
Have you
killed
ever
it.
done something stupid to try and impress someone you like?
Dumb.
Maybe you bought them a super expensive gift, or
No.
tried writing them a poem.
No.
Or worse, singing them a song.
Nope.
Yeah, I can hear the collective sigh of regret emanating from
Uh-oh.
around the world. These approaches may sound cringy, but they're nothing compared to what these next 2 award winners did. Back in 2004, 2 Taiwanese college students met up one evening, and after they'd had a little to drink, they both revealed they liked the same girl on campus. It was at this point things got heated, and so they decided to have a contest to see who between them would get the rights to pursue the girl.
Neither one of
And
them.
how did they settle this? A nice, safe game of rock, paper, scissors, maybe? Nope. Seeing as this was a matter of honor and dignity, they decided to joust. But instead of horses, they'd use their scooters. The rules were that they'd ride at each other full speed, and the first one to turn away would lose the contest. So, without helmets or any kind of safety equipment, the 2 rode straight at each other, topping out at 50 miles per hour, and crashed. Neither had the smarts to turn away, which cost both of them their lives. Ironically, they could have saved both their lives if they'd just talked to the girl. As it turned out, she hadn't been interested in either of them.
Yeah,
And that just makes this pair of Darwin Awards all the shinier.
because they liked her. Yeah.
Kitchen nightmares. Is there anything worse than losing the keys to your home? Ugh, it's so annoying. If you're lucky, you might remember that you forgot to lock a window and be able to clamber in that way. But it's usually better to just wait for a locksmith to let you in. Otherwise, your impatience could have some real consequences, like what happened to this next Darwin Award winner. Back in 2004 in Wolfsburg, Austria, an incredibly inebriated gentleman returned home late one evening, only to discover he couldn't find his keys. No matter, he thought, because he could slip in through the kitchen window. The window itself was fixed at the base and tilted out, giving him just enough room to squeeze his head and part of his torso through. And that's when he got stuck. With both his legs off the ground and being a little drunk, he couldn't coordinate himself enough to push through. And then there was another complication. As he'd been struggling to get in, he'd accidentally turned on the tap below him, filling the kitchen sink with water. The more he struggled, the more he exhausted himself until he apparently fell asleep, still stuck in the window. From here, his head slipped into the water, and being as drunk as he was, he didn't wake up. and he drowned. He was discovered the next day, and to really make this a top-tier Darwin Award winner, as they were removing the body, the police found his keys in his pocket.
Wow!
Man, if he'd survived this ordeal, I'm pretty sure he would have died of embarrassment.
That's bad.
A bridge too far. It takes some serious kahunas to ride a motorbike. The speeds, the other road users, the lack of airbags, it's a risky way to travel. But even more so when you're a grade A idiot, like this next guy was. Back in 2008, a Floridian gentleman dressed in swim trunks and sneakers was riding along when he noticed the Minnesota Key drawbridge ahead of him was beginning to open. Any sensible rider worth their salt would have slowed down and simply waited for the drawbridge to level again before crossing it, but not this guy. No, instead, clearly thinking he was in a Fast and Furious movie, decided to try his luck and jump the gap. So he increased his speed and shot forward. Unfortunately for him, drawbridge designers anticipate idiots just like this and so build in safety measures to most drawbridges in the form of crossing guards. The guards dropped down before a man had a chance to hit the brakes, clotheslining him off his bike at breakneck speeds and careening him over the side of the bridge. He hit the water, but the impact instantly wiped him out of the gene pool. Ironically, the bike carried on and apparently made it over to the other side. How oddly satisfying. Firework fail.
None of your anus.
There are a lot of things you shouldn't do with a firework. You shouldn't hold it while lighting the fuse. You shouldn't plant it somewhere dangerous. You shouldn't aim it at people. A lot of pretty obvious don'ts there. But you know which one I didn't think needed saying? Don't put it in your butt. And yet, here we are in Sunderland, UK, a place I can only assume is the Florida of England, back in 2006. It's November 8th, a few days after England's famous Guy Fawkes Night, where bonfires and fireworks are lit to celebrate the day Mr. Fawkes didn't blow up the Houses of Parliament. With a leftover firework, our award winner decided he would let this one off in style, by lighting the fuse, lying down on the ground, and planting the firework, twixt his cheeks.
There's no way.
There's every chance he could have just come away from this with a few burns to his backside if he'd planted it so that it shot directly up into the sky. However, the idiot had put the firework in his rear the wrong way round.
What type of nasty
So instead of
shit?
shooting up into the sky, it exploded on his scrotum.
You dirty
The incident, compromised his junk and his ability to procreate, thus removing any more of his idiot antics from the gene pool. Wow, if I didn't know any better, I'd say Sunderland was challenging Florida for the title of most chaotic place in the world. Some like it hot. There's something about the superhuman abilities on display during competitive endurance sports that you can't look away from. You want to watch a man run 200 miles in 48 hours? Of course you do. You want to see someone cycle 400 miles in less than a day? Absolutely. You want to watch someone step into a superheated hot box and stay in there for as long as possible? Hang on, what? That last one is real? And it's called the World Sauna Championship? Yeah. Founded in 1999, the World Sauna Championship was an endurance competition held in Finland. Each year, many eager sauna-loving competitors would enter the hot box, which was an infernal 230 degrees Fahrenheit,
Damn.
hotter than the boiling point of water and hot enough to cause third-degree burns. Water was poured on the coals inside the sauna every 30 seconds, and competitors would attempt to outlast every other person in there, with their efforts only counting if they could walk out of the box unaided. Not only was this an actual official event, competitors had to sign a legal agreement promising not to sue the event organizers if they got injured. Although that wouldn't make a difference to one of the men who competed back in 2010. After spending 6 minutes in the hellish hotbox and outlasting every other competitor in there, the final 2 remaining competitors passed out and had to be dragged from the box. Both were covered in third-degree burns and blisters and were suffering from convulsions. One was transferred to the hospital where they revealed 70% of his skin was burned, his respiratory system was scorched, and his kidneys failed. He was put into a medically induced coma for 6 weeks before miraculously pulling through. The other guy wasn't so lucky. He passed mere minutes after being dragged from the box. And to really add the shine to this award, both competitors were disqualified. Well, hey, if you enter life-threateningly stupid competitions, I guess you win life-threateningly stupid prizes.
Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Make sure to comment, like, and to subscribe. It's your boy BlastphamousHD Twisms.